What's happening in the canine industry? For all the latest news, views, and expert opinions, stay right here for the Canine Paradigm. You'll hear from industry leaders, experts, doyens of the industry, learned colleagues, movers and shakers, and the odd randy guest. Get the latest insights and expert advice from both here and abroad from the people in the know. Now, here are your hosts, Glenn Cook and Pat Stewart. And I'm Lofty Fulton, and I'm out of here.
Hey, I need to tell you something.
Oh, God, what is it?
Some time ago, we did an ad episode where we talked about how we were going to get better with our ads.
I was wondering where you were going.
Yeah.
We're so shit at the ads.
That's what we said. We said, we're so shit, we're going to get better, and we just didn't.
We don't. We're so full of shit. All right, well, here they are. We got 5 sponsors currently.
All right, who are they?
First is the OG, the Einzelwiener.
Oh, that knob.
The bullfed.
Yeah.
Nah, he's the OG. He's been with us since the start.
No, he's good.
He is going to
He's a
sell
good
you
boy.
whatever you need.
Yep.
He'll get it. What you should do is contact Jason from Mineswick Dog Queer with some peculiar product, tell him you want it, and make him get it in and sell it to you. Even if you could buy it somewhere else, just make sure he gets it in for you.
Just make that bastard work.
But in all honesty, I'd say 90% of my shit comes from him, and it's all the best stuff.
I did see some feedback on our forum where somebody was really intrigued about your handler package, the one that you got from Jason. Obviously, it works. Like,
Yeah, it's
people
good.
are paying attention to the
Yeah, the
ads.
leashes
That's
are good.
great. Even though we're shit at this, we do a terrible job of actually trying to keep things updated. It's great to see that the people who are investing in our show are actually getting some leeway.
Yep. Mate, I've heard that your wife sells some canine products.
My wife is doing great guns at the moment. I said before that she's been supported terrifically in the United States, which has been good, but I will swing that back home and say that so many more people in Australia are doing it. And it's great to see, like, there are people finally in the sporting dog world who are starting to prioritize nutrition for their dogs. And I know them. I can see them when Narelle comes in and says, oh, guess who bought some product off me for the first time. So
Are you saying there's no patient confidentiality?
no, there's
You're
patient
aware-
confidentiality.
Oh, sorry.
It's just a
purchaser
mailing list.
confidentiality.
Well, it's a mailing list.
Are you aware my dog is taking pee, collagen, and what's the other thing he takes?
Antonol.
Antonol.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been on that.
Antonol is not Narelle's business, but I've got to do a shout out for Antonol. They are absolutely fantastic. They're very supportive of our show. Whenever we've done seminars and so forth, they have been first to dip their hand in their pocket. They are very generous with their product. But let me just say, all that aside, their generosity and their advertising and marketing, let me just say on the other side of that, their product is amazing.
Yeah.
Like, it does work. It's very beneficial.
For sure.
It's one of those things where they say Antonol for every dog every day. I totally agree with that. Narelle has even supported that. When people have asked them about her product, she says the 2 things that I would absolutely give to you is Antonol and her Gut Protect formula.
Yeah, right.
Gut Protect is like her holy grail of
Like
her
the
whole
flagship
range.
of the range.
This is not me market talking, okay? Because
This
we
is
are
an ad.
This is an ad, but this is not me doing marketing.
But we've already pointed out we're shit at ads.
I know. Of all the things that she sells, and she sells some killer product, but the one thing that she does sell, which I absolutely agree with her, every dog should have this product, is the Gut Protect.
Really?
100%. It's nothing that they need for being sick. It's something that they need to do just to maintain great gut balance.
Okay.
And gut balance is like mental health. It's one of those things that you absolutely want to get control around. So products like Antonol, great for every day. Gut Protect, great for every day. There's other products that aren't even related to hers called Rosehip Vital and stuff like that. Absolutely fantastic for dogs to be on every sort of day. But I know there's other people we need to talk about. If you want to learn more about Narelle's products, go to our website, canineseuticals.com. I think it's
You'll figure it out.
it's .com
Canine
or
Ceuticals.
.com.au. It's one of those.
No one
but-
types that shit anyway. Everyone just Googles it and
Yeah,
then goes,
just Google it.
yeah.
You'll find it.
Hey,
Yeah.
George Kittredge, I reckon we should get him on the show.
We should have George Kittredge on the show.
Yeah.
Not only is he devilishly handsome,
Yep.
but he's got a fantastic, one-of-a-kind product that I've never seen replicated anywhere in the world. You and me were getting a car ride by him. We got to see the prototype firsthand.
And then his bike got stolen with the prototype on it.
did.
Remember that?
Yes.
Yeah. But anyway, George has Rowdy Hound Dog Box. And
Yes.
so it's a crate that goes on the back of your motorbike so that your dog can go everywhere with you.
Yeah.
And it's cool as shit. It's a great idea. You should
Yeah.
totally get one. Tailored Canines in Canada.
Yeah.
Do you know that Taylor from Tailored Canines is hosting Jazz Whiting later in the year?
I do know that. Yes,
Yes.
I saw the ad. Very good.
Yep.
Not
So-
only is she doing great stuff with her Tailored Canine,
Her training business.
her training business, but she's also getting a fantastic trainer over there to help with her tailored training.
She is. And finally, Barbara de Groot
The sugar mama from the Heart Dog
From the
Training.
Heart Dog Training.
Just fucking throws cash at us.
Just supports the show. God bless her.
Yeah. I think later on in the year when Narelle and I are over doing a seminar with Melanie Benware, Barbara de Groot is coming over.
Wonderful.
I think she has put down a like, and I said, you better come, sugar mama, and she gave me a thumbs up. So hopefully she's going to be there and I can give her some love to repay us for all the kindness and support that she's thrown at us and asked nothing in return.
All right. That's our ad.
Yeah.
That one's good to go for at least another 4 years. You'll hear from us then. Welcome back to episode 300 of the Canine Paradigm.
Can you
I'm
believe
your
it?
host, Pat Stewart. I'm joined in the studio by my co-host, Glenn Cook.
Hello, everyone. Happy episode 300.
300. What is it, 5 years to get to this far?
5-6 years. Yeah. Yep.
I remember we had 2 false starts, right?
We did.
We had 2 false starts. So
The No Homers dog discussion group or something like that.
Well, even without a name, we recorded our first episode
Yep.
3 times.
Yep.
And the first 2, how come they didn't go out? What was the reason? Were we not happy with it or it just didn't get going? We didn't know how to do the stuff?
A combination of all of it. So it was a bit from column A and a bit from column B. Plus, I think we found that it was negative. Like we were making it a bit more of a whinge session than something practical that actually serves the community a little bit more. I feel that when you and I looked back over it, we never really felt at peace with it. I think you and I went to Balamii for something one night. It was either somebody was here or something happened and we were at dinner. And I remember you saying to the question, you said, hey, do you feel good about those episodes or not really? And I said, well, what are your thoughts? And you go, I'm not feeling 100% about it. And I said, yeah, I think we can do better. And that's where we came up with the name, the Canine Paradigm. We discussed that whole concept and then we decided to go.
But the name was that you were always planning on writing a book, right?
Yeah. So
you had that name sort of up your sleeve.
That was
for a long
always,
time.
that was in my journal. So it was always there, like that was going to be the name of the book, the Canine Paradigm. But the reason why I was happy to lend it to this was you and I are speaking chapters of a book. Like this is an audio book, basically. It's a lot of experiences. I feel like that's why we've lasted 300 episodes is we're not just talking about boring shit time and time again and saying the same rhetoric over again. What we're doing is...
I'm sure, without a doubt, at least 100 people just kick their dashboard. They're like, yes, you fucking do.
Well, as you get older, you're prone to repeating yourself more and more, and you do tell your old stories. I remember my grandfather, he used to tell me the same story literally every time I saw him, and my grandmother would do it without a doubt. She would just say the same thing over and over. And I swore to myself when I was a kid, I'd go, I am never going to do that. I'm never going to bore someone with the same story. Here I am now. And I've heard myself doing it and I can hear it coming out of my mouth sometimes. I think, oh my God, I'm my grandparents.
It's funny that.
But storytelling is a big part of life. Like storytelling has been around since we were cave people.
Yeah.
Since the dawn of time. Like Indian tribes have done it, like Native American Indians, the indigenous people of many cultures, our own Aboriginal and the indigenous Australian people have done the same thing, the Dreamtime stories and everything like that, where they sit around and tell the same stories. Like it's a big reason why the communities came together to tell things that happened and the reason why they are the way they are.
Yeah.
But then also add drama and add effect to it. So, like that got passed on for generations because without that, people don't have the reason to carry the story anymore or create the legacy out of those stories.
I truly believe that that's the best way for people to learn is through storytelling.
You're a good storyteller.
I enjoy telling stories. I enjoy regaling people.
Yeah.
But what happened last year, I'll tell a story. Like I've wanted to update my online course, right? And I realized, I was filming all my seminars and I was thinking, I'll do it like the first one. It'll just be footage that I've gotten and then I'll put it out. And I realized that I'm not going to get footage better. It's not going to be an upgrade. And so then I got my shop with the intention of filming an online course there, but it took me a year to get the course ready. And it's only 6 hours of footage that I filmed in a day, but it took me forever to figure out what's my structure? Like, how am I going to do this? And then it occurred to me one day, I was like, it just has to be a series of stories because everything that's in my online course is available for free on YouTube. Like you can learn everything that I teach from other people who are probably better expert at it.
The information out in the world isn't that profoundly different. It's just that people are better at delivering it and have a nicer way of structuring it.
That's it.
And I think you have a more melodic way of reaching people because you appeal to people in a kind fashion, or you have done the hard work for them.
Yeah, well, hopefully. But, not to try and plug my course, although you could get it at seriousdogbusiness.com.
Where?
At seriousdogbusiness.com.
Seriousdogbusiness.com.
You could get it from there.
Okay, cool.
But what I will say is I realized that the whole thing has to be a story arc because it's like the hero's journey. I'm not saying that I'm the hero, but that's like how stories work.
Yeah,
There's there has to be a call to action. There has to be something that the protagonist is bumbling through life. Something happens that sends him on a mission to try and solve a problem. He encounters people along the journey of solving the problem. He meets enemies. There's villains along the way. There's mentors and there's allies along the way, and it results in a learning experience. And so that's what I realized. I was like, if I want to teach people dog training in a way that they will remember it and retain it, it has to be a story. It has to be a series of stories that form one big narrative. And I think that's what we've done here is it's just me and you kind of sit down without ever too much. Like every now and again, I turn up with a bunch of notes of like, this is my agenda.
Yeah, we have notes and we have our time where we discuss things. Yeah, for sure.
Or something, you get a bee in your bonnet about something and say like, I want to, I want to address this.
Yep.
I do the same. That's how episodes tend to come to be. But there's never a like, all right, this is our structure. This is our our intro body conclusion. We just kind of talk and we talk about dog training. And to be honest, not to get all like too circle jerky on it, but I think that for you and I, just our friendship, because we have a regular meeting. Like we have every week that we can do it, and it's most weeks.
Yep.
We sit down for 2 hours and we just talk shit with each other, but we do it into microphones and other people get to listen.
That's right.
And evidently there's thousands of people that are interested, thank God. And, I'm eternally grateful to those people. And the guests that we get on, we get lots of people saying like, can you get this guy on and can you do this? And it's like, nah, because if you point me at somebody that I'm interested in, and they're interested in coming on the show, they'll be a guest on the show.
Yep.
But when people like, I'm interested in this person, can you get them on? I'm like, no, if I haven't developed that interest, it's not going to be a good interview. So the people that we get on is because we're genuinely interested in what they do. We just have conversations with each other that always are, well, for the most part, revolve around dog training. I shouldn't say always. There's plenty of episodes that have nothing to do with dog training.
Yep.
Well, they do because everything is to do with dog training. But yeah, mate, I've loved it. I've loved doing the podcast. I think that it's been one of the most wonderful additions to my life. And I think that the weekly nature of how we try and record it, we're not always successful at that, but the way that we try and do it means that it's a pin. It's a pin in the board that you can rely on. And like, oh, this is something I can count on doing. This is a part of my identity. This is part of who I am. And it's something that I can look back and go, we did an episode last week, we're going to do an episode next week. And it's something that like grounds you in that way, I think. So it's been great.
For me too, mate. I find that, I don't know if the right word is cathartic, but I'm going to use that word anyway because I kind of feel that it serves a purpose in my life that makes me feel more balanced and centered. And as you identified before, and I totally agree with, we've tried to remain as authentic as we possibly can, where we haven't been contrived about how we put the podcast together.
Yeah.
We haven't sort of sat here and just thought, let's have a structure where it's physically outlined and detailed about what we're going to do. We turn on the microphones. We do have things that we've thought about during the week, but that can go anywhere when we're actually recording. By the time we get into the studio and we get this happening, it can go all over the place, and it often does. One of the things that I feel very blessed and privileged about is the change that it's had in people's life. Like the fact that people have come back, not that they've just said, I learned a trick or two in dog training that I haven't thought about, or some phrasing or some thoughts, because people have certainly said that. They've said it's introduced me to a concept of thinking about in training methodologies, which is fantastic because fundamentally that's the roots of the show, that we've tried to make it fundamentally around dog training. However, it's also about life. It's also about the perils and the pitfalls and the trials and tribulations of life as well. Because as trainers, it's not just A to B. It's A to T in getting through as training. There are a lot of things that happen. There are a lot of very high highs and very low lows that people experience. There are times where people feel very silenced and very intimidated. There are some horrible people in this industry, some extremely predatorial people who prey on other people and silence them and shut them down. However, there are more extremely wonderful people in this industry.
Yeah, for sure.
Loving, kind, generous, talented, amazing people
Yep.
that I feel very privileged to have shared time with. Their time is precious, and I'm aware of that. As my time ticks on more and more, I'm aware of how precious people's time is. I want them to know that I don't take that for granted. I don't take your time for granted. And I know you don't take my time for granted. I know that you're a very deep thinking and kind person and considerate in that way, is that you know the importance of people's time. And I'm very aware of how important people's time is. And to have had that time, I feel very indebted and very privileged to some of these people to do that. And that's why I probably want to lead with where I feel, as we asked this question about traveling through time, because I feel that time is such, you and I have some very deep talks off the microphone about the concepts of time, and we really get into the weeds about the dimensions of time and so forth. Other people have talked about some of their experiences of traveling through time and where they could go and what they would do differently or what they would or wouldn't have changed. One of the things that I would have changed is when I had bad feelings about people, and when people that I trusted and people that I felt were creditable people have told me, don't waste your time on these people, I wish I listened to them. And I wish I spent more time trusting when my stomach was vibrating and telling me. When you get that feeling, trust your gut, like that's a real thing. For me, it's a real thing. I vibrate when I'm in the presence of a toxic person. And I really, really wish that I could have avoided those people. Now, unfortunately, they're combined in my timescape. I know them. I've been involved with them. Like I've had to stumble through time with those people. And unfortunately, I can't do anything about that to change. In some ways, it's affected me. And in other ways, it's improved me because now I know who I don't want to be like and how I don't want to treat people. And I've professed exponentially through the podcast, through all these series, that I'm not a perfect person. And that some of the things that I've done throughout my life have been less than ideal. And I do have some regrets about that. For me, I'm the devil in some other people's story. And I know that. For the people that I think are worthwhile and that I've wronged, I'm deeply sorry for that. And if I could go back in time, I would change that as well. And they're the things that I've thought deeply and holistically about. If I was to be able to travel through times, that's what I would try and correct. I don't know what it would do. You know, Brent talks about in his, I'm not going to spoil it, but he talks about the butterfly effect. And I don't know what it would change now and whose path I would and wouldn't cross, which was beneficial. And maybe those wrong people led me to the right people as well. So there are so many constructs to think about when you're messing with the fabrics of time. But I do wish there were people that I could erase from my timescape.
Yeah, right. Okay. Any specific example you can give without getting too into the weeds, but like, how do you think your life would be different? Like, what would be different now if the worst example that you can think of, a person that wronged you in one way or another, like when you're explaining that, there's a person that's in your mind, right? I'm sure you don't want to say that name, but what do you think would be different in your life now if you could remove those events? Like, how would it make you any different as a person? Or change your time in dogs?
That's a great question. If I think about it, it's not a singular thing. They're people that affect multiple peoples. Like they have this fragmentation effect. It's like a frag grenade. When they go off in the room and there's people standing around, multiple people get hit by the frag. And that's what these people do. Like they frag a lot of people in their relationship. There are a lot of broken people, or they're very disenfranchised people, but they really want everybody else to alter their path. I don't know why, but it seems to be something that they want to do. If I think about your question, what I would like to change is the amount of time I spent concerned about their behavior rather than doing something more productive or serving my community in a better way. It dragged me away from my mission and it wasted the time in my life. So as I talked before, you know, like time is so precious. It's like Socrates says, like sand through the hourglass, so are the days of our life.
Socrates said that.
I believe it was Socrates. It's a
I
very,
thought it was that show, Days of Our Lives.
it was on there as well, but it comes from ancient Greece. And it's a very wise saying. It's true. Like the sands of time are running for all of us. I look in the mirror and I can't see the young person that resided within me. I still am, I exist inside that, of course, in my spirit, but my body has changed. There's a lot of things that are changing. The people around me are changing. People I've known for a long time, I can see them all changing. Some people have left the planet. They're not here anymore. And if you listen to them, when you talk to other people, they're some of the deepest regrets that they have as well. And in fact, one of my colleagues very many, many years ago who got sick and was terminal said to me, nobody on their deathbed ever wished for more time in the office. Now, I don't believe that was their original quote, but they awoken to that quote when things had changed for them. My dad said the same thing when he was dying. He said, I just wish I could have gone back and changed a few things. And he was specifically talking about his relationship with my sister and I. Of course that affected me. Of course it did. Of course that had a measurable complication in the way that I think about things and the way things happen. But if I'm going to flip on this conversation momentarily to talk about the dog training side of things, I wish I knew about marking effectively when I first started because I had a ball and an absolute riot in the times that I was in the ADT days. Best time of my life. I'll never get that back again, but I wish I knew about marking back then because I could have accelerated the dog training scene in Australia right then and that moment if I'd really paid attention to it because people tried to show.
That's wild to me.
Yeah.
That someone as experienced as you, being in it as long as you have and achieved the things that you have, to think that the most basic in-home behavior mod, because the dog is barking at the door, we're teaching those people to use markers.
Yeah.
Like it is one of the very foundations of dog training. And that is wild to me to think that you guys were doing what you're doing at ADT, but no one had taught you about marker training at that point.
We knew how to mark behaviors, but we were doing it more through body language than through a verbal.
No one, you can never not use a marker.
Right. As Michael Ellis said when he was here the last time, he said people tend to think of markers as being something verbal or auditorial. And he said, but markers are very tactile. He said they can be something that you can see. Like if you're deaf and you can't hear, how do you mark? You do it through light, you do it through touch, whatever it might be. There are any sensory capacity you can use to mark behavior.
Yeah.
So we were doing it in a more tactile way. Like take, for example, when a dog was doing a hold and bark. Instead of saying something to the dog, we would just raise the sleeve, cue the dog like this is your cue to do it. Even sending dogs down, we would tap the dog to tell the dog, okay, it's good to go now, or verbally say it. So we would cue and mark. And I know I'm talking about cues and marks here. But we were doing it, but just not as efficiently or as effectively as we could. Thinking now about, I was with Mando inside last night and I was sitting like a big fat slob on the couch and I was training him in the room. And people say don't train your dog in the house and they have good reasons for not doing it. I defy everyone's rules. I do the way I like doing it because it works for me. And I live with the consequences too, of course, because he's running around in the lounge room being a pain in the ass, getting his ball and lobbing it all over Narelle and I. We live with the consequences. We both agreed we would. And for anybody who doesn't want that and they want the dog to tune out, you want your dog to tune out, you've got young kids, I totally understand that. And I respect it, and it's the right thing to do. Absolutely the right thing to do.
Dog training is about pros and cons. You choose your pros, you accept your cons.
100%. It's what you're willing to live with. There's things that my trainers and people around me who've seen me do things before have said, you told us not to do that. And I said, I can live with it and I will live with it. You can't, or the client can't. They don't know how to manage the complications that arise from that, where I totally can. I'm proficient to do it. And I expect you guys not to do this. So don't do it. Do as I say. Don't do as I do. Not because I'm trying to be arrogant and hobnail you or stop you from doing things. It's just that I don't want you to go through the beginner or the intermediary issues without knowing what and how these complications can be laced in at a later time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, look, I've monopolized this. So what have you thought about through your timescape?
Mate, as we ask this question of people, so have you got the question handy to read it?
Yeah, I have. Yeah. So let me pull it out so I can officially ask it to you, Mr. Patrick Stewart. Not from Star Trek genre, of course.
Well, I haven't told you the luggage story. I have. I've said that on the podcast.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
If you could travel through time to any point in your training career where in time would you go and what would be your objective?
Okay, so that's the question that you just answered and that we've put to a bunch of people, and that's going to follow in this episode, their answers on that.
Yep.
I had a good read of that because I sent it out to a bunch of people, and I'd been thinking really hard on like what would be my answer. And I got bitten pretty badly like a long time ago when I was still in the army. And so I thought, oh, well, I'd like to have not been bitten. That would be handy because it fucked me up. Like I recovered from the bite fine. I don't even really have any scars or anything from it. It was okay.
You've told us about that bite.
It was just a dog. Just a dog bit me, and like I stayed calm, he stayed calm. It went for a fair while because there was something not right with the dog, and I just sort of talked him out of it, and he came back around and went and got on his own bed. But it was a good, like I actually have no idea how long it was. I describe it as feeling like it was like 20 minutes, but it might have been 10 seconds. I don't fucking know, right?
But it feels like if we're talking about time.
Well, I thought I could be killed in this kennel. Yep. Like there was a good chance I'm alone. I'm in this kennel by myself. This dog has fucking bitten me and he's not there. Like I'm looking into his eyes and there's fucking nothing behind these eyes.
So let's describe that because that's an important thing because there's people who listen who have been bitten. We've talked about this on the show before.
Yeah.
And since we did that, people have opened up and shared some horrific stories, but it's the way they feel about it. So you weren't really a dog guy at this stage.
No, it was really early days.
Your job was
I mean, I thought I was. I would have described myself as one, right? But I knew nothing. But I mean, without going too much into the detail of that.
But that wasn't your job, right? Your job was to be a soldier. Like first and foremost, you were training to be a commando.
Yeah. Well, I had been for a long time.
So you're a commando at that time.
Yeah.
Okay. So your main role was an army guy.
Yeah.
You were infiltrating. You were doing all the cool guy stuff.
Like I did a lot of weird stuff in the army, but like at the end of the day, I was an assaulter. Like I was a gunfighter. I was the guy in black that kicks in the door.
So when you play a video game, you're the group of like 5 people who get dropped in before everybody else goes in to try and destabilize all the shit that goes on.
Something similar. But
like
but nowhere near as cool as that, right?
Okay.
Like whenever I talk about army stuff, people always imagine like it's not the cool things.
Yeah.
Because that shit doesn't really happen. Anyway, but my point is I thought, I would like to have not been bitten because that fucked me up for quite a while. I became quite scared of dogs.
I want to talk about that. Like that's a good thing to talk about.
I became, not really scared of dogs, but I acted differently around dogs for a number of weeks. Like I was concerned.
But did you know he was going to bite you?
Well, I did just before.
Tell me about that. Relive the minute.
Well,
if you can.
Like I was cleaning his kennel.
Yeah.
3 weeks earlier, or roughly, I'd had a run-in with the dog.
Spare no detail. Don't rush through this.
Well, it is a long time ago. I'm trying to remember all the details, but he ended up being put down because he was a mess, right?
Yeah.
Like, and he tried to bite me about 3 weeks earlier because I cut him a look while he was a wall painter. There was shit all over his walls, and I was cleaning his kennel. I looked at him in disgust, and he was like, "Hey, you don't get to look at me like that." And I escaped. I managed to get out of the kennel.
So were you scared of him then? Like,
like everybody had a healthy respect of this dog because he did tear up a few people.
Right. And how did that make you feel knowing that? Like,
I was like,
through your mind?
Well, I was like, it doesn't matter because I'm not going to do anything stupid around this dog. And evidently I did. Yeah. I want to keep moving because there's a lot of stuff I want to go through on things. But I thought I really would like to not have been bitten by that dog because the outcome of it was that for quite a while I was not, like I don't want to say I'm scared of dogs, but I was scared of dogs.
But you were sensitized.
Yeah. And I was like, fuck, I didn't see that coming.
Yeah.
And I got bitten. I got lucky in how bad it wasn't, right? But it could have been much worse. At the end of the day, it really wasn't a bad injury at all, right? But in my mind, I was like, oh shit, you got lucky, and you're lucky that you had the wherewithal to not fight him back because he wasn't there. He just bit one time and there was like emptiness behind his eyes and he just held. And he didn't even bite that hard. It was like he was holding me more than anything. Anyway, and I thought, well, I would really like that not to have happened because it scared me quite a bit and it took me a long time to get over it. But later, having had that experience, that gave me empathy to sit with people who had been bitten and had similar experiences to me. And without that experience, like, I would prefer not to have had it. But when I think about it, I'm like, no, that probably was pretty important to happen to me because that bite probably stopped me getting plenty of other bites. And also it's allowed me to sit with people who have had worse bites than me because there's plenty. Like I say, it wasn't that bad, but it was enough that it scared the fuck out of me at the time.
Yep.
But it wasn't a big deal. But I've been able to, I suppose, hold space with people who have had really bad bites and help them through the process of getting over it. Because I think for me, having not at a point been scared of dogs because of being bitten, I wouldn't appreciate that could even happen. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because you're like, oh, you made a mistake, you're bitten, dogs bite, horses kick, cats scratch. That fucking happens.
Yep.
And that's all easy to say until you find yourself alone in a kennel with a military working dog that's hanging onto your arm, right?
Yep.
And so,
or any dog for that reason.
Yeah. And so then it's like, all right, I've been through that and I'm glad that I did. So then I was like, no, I wouldn't change that. I'm glad that happened to me. That's fine. And then I thought really hard about like client dogs and stuff. And there's this one dog, I've spoken about it on the podcast plenty of times, little Shar-Pei, that the dog wasn't that bad. There was a bunch of issues, right? But in my hands, it was not a big deal. If the dog had actually been my dog or your dog, I wouldn't own that dog, but like you'd manage it, you'd fix it. It wouldn't be that big a deal. And I gave really bad advice to the owner and I misread them and went on a softly approach that I probably could have just fixed that in a session or two, Like I could have just been like, hey, fuck you, stop doing it. And the dog would have stopped. Now, it wouldn't have fixed the dog's issue, like that would have been the longer fix, but the display of the behavior, I could have gotten rid of that behavior very quickly and then given the people the 6-week plan to make the dog feel better about its life, but not display the problem behaviors that it had. And I thought, no, I misread the clients and the situation entirely. And one day they cancel a session on me because they've euthanized a dog. Because they just didn't see the light at the end of the tunnel. And I hadn't given them that light. Like the tunnel was too far away. The light at the end of the tunnel, they couldn't see it because the dog was, from their perspective, really bad. But I knew it's like, this is all show. This is just a dog that's having a tantrum. This is bad. And for the average non-dog person, they would see this as really bad. But also, like, they gave me the history. I know how the behavior developed. I wanted to help it go away in a similarly, like, drawn-out fashion rather than just cutting it off. That was a really bad mistake. And so I thought, fuck, that plays on my mind a little bit. Like when I think about failed clients and stuff like that, people who I've let down, that's for sure one of them. And the problem is I see the guy a fair bit, right? So like that's why it's regularly in my mind because they're local to me.
Right.
But also the guy works in an industry that I see. I won't say where he works, but like I see him from time to time. Every few months I bump into the guy. And so it sort of bubbles back up. But he got another dog. That dog had a fucking shit ending, I'm sure. But, he got another dog and it worked out for them. But also that experience changed the way that I deal with people and dogs, right? Where I now am more upfront with people about there's a few different ways we can do this and
choose what's going to
Yeah, there's pros and cons to all of this.
Yep.
And a lot of that has had, like the seminars I now teach, calling them these pros and cons seminars, like that's kind of the foundation of it, is that this is a fucking choose your own adventure, man. Like I, over my time in dogs, have developed a pretty broad skill set and I'm pretty practiced in many of these techniques. Some I'm better at than others, but, I know, especially when we're dealing in in-home behavior mod stuff, it's unlikely. I mean, of course, there's stuff that stumped me every now and again, but it's unlikely you're going to hit me with something I haven't seen before and fixed in a couple of different ways. So I now lay out to people and go, this is pros and cons of this. There's a forever management timeline, if that's what you want to do. There's the 6-month timeline. There's the fucking today timeline and a few different things in between. And the experience of the dog is going to vary along these things. And it's not necessarily going to change in a linear fashion like you might imagine, because letting that dog simmer in stress is going to be a worse experience for the dog over the 6-week period versus the 2-day period or, whatever. That's one of the things. And so I thought, fuck, I'm shitty that dog had to die for me to learn that, but I'm glad that I have that information. Then I was sort of thinking about there's so many different experiences that I've had or things that I wish that I had known. And I think that's one of the things then my mind went to, okay, I wish that I had this piece of information earlier. But I have enjoyed the process of getting all those pieces of information. And I think one of the coolest things about my job, and Bart told me this when early days of me working with Bart, and it certainly has been my experience ever since, is he told me, he goes, when you start to travel around and teach people, they get you in to teach your specialist thing, which, for him was Nipopo and all of the many and various things that Bart is the expert at. And for me, it was to teach that initially and then other things as well. But they are usually experts at something when they get you in. And what I've noticed of my own skill set is that it was on a steady sort of incline up, and then you hit the point where you start getting invited other places to teach other people things. And the process of doing that just accelerates it, and you're on like a sky, you're headed straight up. That steady incline disappears and you start heading straight up because your exposure to really high level people and their ability to do things is now so much more because they're inviting you to teach you your specialist piece, but then you get to take from them their specialist piece as well.
Yeah, it makes sense.
And so I'm like, I probably wouldn't, if I could travel back in time and say to myself, like, hey, man, this is a bunch of info about dog training. Yep, I would serve some people better in those early days for sure. But I've really enjoyed the process of sort of figuring that out. And so I think the thing that I would change myself, and it's something that I would, I probably would need to, I can't find myself constantly working on it myself now, is that when we started this podcast, and certainly in line with talking about 300 episodes, is that I was really concerned and remain really concerned about being on the record saying things, right?
Yeah.
And we've been at this 5 or 6 years or whatever, 300 episodes. I'm sure that there are people who will be like, oh, Pat, he's a fucking flip-flops his mind on all kinds of things. Because if you listen to like some people that maybe they just found the podcast 6 months ago.
You mean while you were learning about things?
Well, this is the thing. So like if you listen to 300 episodes in 300 days or less, you're going to be like, oh, this fucking guy changes his mind every 5 minutes. But
they're listening to you learning about.
Yeah. Well, this podcast has essentially become one of the things that I've enjoyed about it, and it's something that really scared me at the start, but now I'm really happy with, but it's still like most things that you were ever fearful of, like it's always chasing you, right? Like it's always looming. There's always a presence of it. Is that we're on the record saying all these things, and I want to be able to change my mind about it. And I have many times, and we just do it. And we like maybe sometimes like explain, like if I can remember being on the record feeling a way about something, then I do, right? And I say, oh, well, I've changed my mind on this for these reasons. But other times I don't remember actually verbalizing stuff, or I just go with what I feel like saying in the moment. And so we have evolved. And I think one of the cool things about 300 episodes of this podcast is that I think, and I know this to be true because quite a few people have reached out to me, is that there's a lot of people who have essentially watched me and you, but you at a much more advanced level at starting the podcast, right? Have watched me evolve as a trainer. And the scary thing about, I hate it when people say, oh, just be authentic. But like we are, because it's just me and you bullshitting with each other, and it's going into a microphone, into your computer and out to all these people, right? So people who like me for who I am on the podcast, they actually like me because this is who I am.
Yeah.
And the people who don't like me for being on the podcast, for what things I've said here, I have many times in the past gotten quite upset about that and really been in my feels about, oh, these people don't like me and I've got to be careful what I say. But then I get over that and I don't. And now I'm like knowing what I know about the world and how it all works at the moment, I'm quite happy to be disliked for something I've said on the show,
for sure.
because it's my opinion. If you want to convince me otherwise, go ahead. I'm very open to change, as I've just said, and there's plenty of evidence of that. There's 300 episodes of me flip-flopping around all over the place and changing my mind about things. So the thing that ultimately, if I could counsel myself earlier in my dog training career would be, hey man, care less about what people think, because they're going to think what they think and you can't fucking control it. And you just continue to do what you do and feel good about yourself in how you do it, then it'll be fine. Everything will work out.
I got told something really early in my life when I was a kid by my uncle, who was one of the most treasured people in my life. And I was having a bad time with that one day because I was worried about being popular at school. He said, Glenn, this is not my saying. And he said, but think on this. You can please some of the people some of the time, but not all the people all the time. Mm-hmm. I've got all the friends I ever need in my life. Doesn't mean that I'm not open to meeting new people or having great relationships or being present to that unfolding. It doesn't mean that at all. But I don't need any more people. I don't need to look for advocacy in other people's eyes all the time. Like there are people who, like you, I love the fact that I go places and people say, hey, man, I heard your podcast. You and Pat changed our lives. That's fucking amazing to hear that. Like I can't tell you how privileged I feel that we got to have those conversations, which leads to other conversations. And of course, it also invites magic people into your life sometimes. But there are people out there who don't like me and they don't like my ethos, or they don't like the things that I've said about this, that, or the other. So be it. We're talking about time. If you don't like me, take your time somewhere else. Don't make the time to listen to me if you don't want to hear what I've got to say. Yeah, you and I have tried to be as authentic as we possibly could on this show. Like we don't have an agenda turning the mics on. Even this.
Well, we have an agenda, but it's our agenda. It's what we genuinely feel. You know what I mean? Like it's the same whether the mics are on or off.
Yep. It's just a conversation that we're prepared to have no matter what.
I probably swear more with the mics off.
Yes, that's true.
And to some of you,
Drop
you
the
might be
C-bomb
like,
more.
holy fuck, you swear more? Yeah, go fuck yourself. That's what I do.
There's some odd people out there who talk about authenticity, but they're some of the least authentic people I've ever met in my life.
Yeah, and that's why I don't like talking about it, because usually when somebody starts telling you how they are something, you're like, oh, fucking, methinks the lady doth protest too much, you know what I mean? And so that's why I don't like to have that level of conversation. But my thing, what I would travel back in time and say to myself, and it's because I find myself still saying it now. I'm not immune to this. I'm not over it totally. Is that I still sometimes value the opinions of others too much.
Yeah.
And I think that has inhibited some of my growth for sure. Like that has definitely inhibited some of my growth. But that is to me a very difficult line to balance between making sure you take in opinions of others, because sometimes people that really care about you will give you opinions you don't want to fucking hear. And I think that's really important as well. Like there's many people in my life that will call me on my bullshit. And they're the most important people to keep around.
Yeah, for
you
sure.
know, because they're the people who, when they say, hey man, your opinion on X, Y, and Z, whatever it was, the specifics are irrelevant. But when they reach out and they're a person that I know loves me and has my interests at heart, when they reach out and they say words that feel like they're venomous, I know they're people that have no venom in them. And so those words, while they hurt, are very important for me to hear. But sometimes it can be hard to discern who those people are. And sometimes you take advice from people or care about the opinions of people that you really shouldn't. And it's not until later that you can reflect on it and go, oh, fuck you. You're a piece of shit. You were trying to derail me. My interests weren't at heart. You were trying to fuck me over. And so those people will always come up.
They're the people in time that I wish I never met. Like the people who deliberately were derailing me and occupying much of my precious time.
Yeah.
Like you're describing your own experiences, I too had too much time vested in them.
Yeah.
And they're the things that I really wish I could have taken back, because I could have done so much more. Brent and I were talking about how we really wish that we had time to go over and when we were younger and spend time with Michael. You know, Michael Ellis Dog School, way back when he was really doing, you know, like
When it was new.
when it was new. And but even it doesn't mean that what he's teaching now isn't amazing and isn't relevant, because he's evolved, you know, like he's working with other people and he's integrating their material into his material as well. So it doesn't mean that I've got him at a bad time. It just means that I wish that there were influences in my life back then that I think if I could just cut you out and just have that time again, it wouldn't have spoiled time, and it wouldn't have, I guess it bruised me to a point, you know, like when you look at a nice bit of fruit and it's got a bruise on the side of it and you go, oh, it's a shame about that bruise. Well, that's how they made me. You know, it's not just me, it's multiples of us. We always get those little knocks and bangs. They're those little imperfections that you get during time. And I just think, if only I could have just avoided that. Now, we all talk about the magic of going back in time and, you know, not living with too many regrets. It doesn't mean I have a great list of regrets and I'm going to go to my deathbed and say, oh, I regret so much. But they are regrets, and they are things that I really just wish I could have done better. I just really think that I could have skipped through a lot of the drama without having to have shared space and time with those people. But it also has educated me to know what they're like, because they carry very similar traits. I see them coming faster now, and I'm more aware of who they are and what they're doing. I can skip ahead of the chapters now. It's like the movie Click with Adam Sandler, where he just skips through time.
Yeah.
But I can see it now. And I've been right. My intuition's been right. Like when I can see it coming, I think, oh, I know who you are. I can see through your predatory guise, the way that you're trying to lure people in, but it's not real. You don't care and you don't love them. You're just a fucking predator, a wolf in sheep's clothing, so to speak. And I'm glad not to share space with those people anymore.
Well, we've said our things.
We have said our things.
Funny how it kind of was similar things. I think one of the things before we do our kind of close up on this and we start letting other people answer these questions.
Yep.
One of the incredible things of doing this podcast is the people that we've met through doing it and the access that it's given us to other people.
This is indeed a portal into the lives of other people.
Yeah.
Getting to share those experiences has been nothing short of a miracle.
Yeah.
Magic.
Yeah.
Yep, the magic of the podcast.
So I've loved doing it. Thank
Yep.
you. It was your idea. Thank you for fucking even having the idea of doing it.
Not really, not entirely. I think you and I were sitting down and talking about a lot of things, and people were overhearing us telling, because you and
False. I remember. False. I remember. It was out there in the car park,
Yeah.
and you had just been on Josh Moran's podcast. And I remember where I was standing because you were like, hey, what do you think about maybe we do a podcast? I was like, son of a bitch, I'm in.
I did say that. I did say that, but I remember the conversation because I didn't think you would be interested in it at the time.
Well, I was terrified. I was really scared
Yeah.
of being, but because also I was a person who was like not having a profile. You know what I mean? Like, so yeah, my whole life I did a job that I lied to people about. Like I've said, the idea of being recorded and having an opinion and telling my story was terrifying to me, like legitimately fucking terrifying. But here we are, and it's turned out to probably be one of the best things that I've ever done.
And fortunately, the people who haven't criticised it have internationally acclaimed it. Like there's been so many people who've given us positive reviews, which we are very thankful about. But going back to that point, just quickly before we do move on, the reason that happened, the reason I approached you, yes, it was about Josh Moran's podcast. It was also that you and I were sitting together, we were getting drunk and we were telling stories.
Yeah,
and that happened a lot at seminars, and it happened when we were all training together. And I remember people like Neville and Brent and so forth. There were a list of people going, fuck you and Pat, I got some stories. And I thought, we actually have.
Yeah.
We got stories about different things, because I remember you were telling me stories about things that you did with the Commandos and things that you did with Sam and stuff like that. And I thought, yeah, this guy's deep, like still water runs deep. There's some things there, like I want to dig this out of you. I want to talk to you more about it, but I think we should share this with our Australian dog fraternity, because there's stuff that we're doing together. And I thought, wouldn't this make a cool story if we could tell other people this?
Yeah.
I think effectively that's how it all came to be.
Yeah, for sure. So
And
it's been
I
awesome.
still remember getting my Phoenix tattoo at your place,
Oh,
and
that's
you
right,
came
yeah.
running and go, there's 100 people on our list.
Yeah.
And
no,
I thought-
it was like 40. Like when it was.
Oh, it was growing. It was
Yeah,
growing.
'cause it was the day we launched it.
Brent started sharing it with people ahead of us doing the official launch.
Yeah.
Because we sent it to him to listen to get feedback from. And Brent started going, oh, listen to this, everyone. And
Yeah,
then
yeah.
all of a sudden it just like,
40 people have listened
40
to our
people.
podcast.
Yeah, that's
Holy
right.
shit, this is amazing.
And we thought 100, wouldn't it be great if we got 200?
Yeah.
And then here we are, and it's like tens of thousands of people.
Yeah. Well,
Almost 3 million downloads.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's cool. So what you're about to hear is a bunch of people who that very question that me and Glenn just answered, it's a bunch of them giving their answers. There's a bit of a mix because you've done some real interviews with people, and
Yep.
then I just sent
You've
out
done some sound bites.
Yeah, so I sent out the call to people just to, hey, record this for us and send it in, and we're going to mix them all together. And if yours isn't in there, it's probably because you didn't get it to me on time.
Yep.
When I didn't give you a timeline, so that's my fault, 100%.
Yeah.
Or the audio couldn't be cleaned up sufficiently because that's the way that it went.
Yep.
But here it is.
Enjoy.
All-round good guy and great friend, Alex Edwards.
Hey everyone, Alex here from Refined Canine in Melbourne. Boys, congratulations, hitting 300 episodes. That is a huge achievement. It's great to see you both prospering with it and the show continuing to grow. So congratulations. You're definitely making the dog world a better place. Well done. Great question as well. If I could have my time back in the dog world, where I'd go to and what my objective kind of be. I think if I had my time back again, I probably wouldn't really change too much. I started about 20 years ago on a very sort of like Keeler-based style of training at a club that I was at, and it really made you watch dogs a lot more because it was a pre-YouTubey kind of time in dog training. So you had to watch dogs a lot more, you had to assess things a lot more, and while the training wasn't as good as what we know now, it definitely had a place, and there's still some of those things are still gold to this day. The pivoting point, I think, in my career was probably the first trip I did to the States, going to Michael Ellis' school for the first time, spending some time with Martin Dealey, doing some stuff with Josh Moran. Just seeing very different aspects of the dog world is probably a real eye-opener about how you can change the way you train, and all these people do it very successfully in their own way. So watching Michael use food and toy deliveries as rewards and reinforcements was something very different to what I'd seen before, and watching the power that it would bring out of the dogs was just amazing. So going from that, and then, watching Martin Dealey and being a retrieval sort of champion, the stuff he was doing at the time was really cool, and I enjoyed that. And then doing stuff with Josh, Moran as well was really cool. Just training dogs and spitballing ideas and, comparing like how we like to approach certain things was a lot of fun. So that was definitely a big point in my career. And I probably wish that came a little bit earlier. But at the same point in time, I don't regret the sort of way that I came into it and the way that I sort of learned how to watch dogs' body language and all that sort of stuff. So weird answer to your question, but it's kind of just been my journey so far. So once again, boys, thank you for everything you do for the dog industry, make it a better place and sharing knowledge. I know it takes a lot of time out of your weeks and stuff like that. So thank you again. Congratulations on 300, and I will see you both soon for a sneaky beer.
Joining us for episode 300, dear friend Brent Dry.
So I'm joined with Brent Dry now for our 300th show. And the question that we've been asking everybody who's been joining us along this little career path is, if you could travel through time to any point in your training career, where in time would you go and what would be your objective?
Thanks for having me on, guys. First and foremost, I really appreciate it. It is a good question. I saw it in the Canine Paradigm chat group. So I saw it when it first went up and I got tagged, and it made me think about quite a few different things. My answer is I wouldn't change a thing, actually. I think maybe I'm really scared of the butterfly effect, so I don't want to screw my life up by going back, right? So just in case, I wouldn't want to. But I honestly see my progression through dog training, through the professional stage of what I've done with dogs. I see it as something that's been really blessed. I see it that everything's really just fallen into alignment, and it starts right at the start for me. When I did the NDTF course, the National Dog Trainers Federation course, I did it, I think, roughly speaking, I think I started in very late January or February, and I actually met my wife, Kat. We did the course together, and Kat was actually meant to do the course 2 months or 3 months before me, but they bumped that course, so we ended up doing the course together. So that's kind of like the first thing for me, where I did the NDTF course, I met Kat on the course, then I met Glenn, and I think the instructors that I had at that time on the course were all amazing. Like, we really had, we had Boyd a lot, we had you a lot. So that NDTF course at the time, I think, was run by, Lofty would say, doyens of the industry, right? So
yes.
I think I was really, really lucky time-wise to kind of get in there. And then finishing the course, not long after that, you went up to Sydney. And then you going to Sydney, Glenn, opened up more opportunities for things like us to come up, do seminars, meet trainers, meet people up in Sydney, all of those types of things as well. So we finished the NDTF course. We started our business, the Canine Company. You moved to Sydney. You start running, seminars and workshops. We start coming up and meeting people from around the world through that. Because at that stage, everything was learning. A lot of things were coming out online.
Yeah.
Ed Frawley's stuff was all coming out online. Michael Ellis's DVDs you could buy. So all of these sorts of things were giving me at that time. So it was a perfect opportunity to get all of this type of learning. So once we kind of had our business up and running, and then we were traveling up to Sydney, because there were some seminars down here, but not a lot. So I brought Tyler Muto out. So Tyler came out. We spent time with you up in Sydney, then back down here in Melbourne. After that, we went to the IACP conference. We got to meet all of the legends over there, which was fantastic. We got Ed Frawley so drunk that it wasn't funny.
Oh, that was incredible.
And Jeff. So that was awesome. So I really see this progression of my journey through my dog training world. It's just been, I feel like I've been lucky in so many steps in so many regards. So it's tough for me to actually pick a spot and go, I'd go back here and change something, or I'd go back here and invest something. But I really don't think I would. If you pushed me, I would just say I would just invest more time in learning. Like, that would be the only thing. And, I've done a lot of learning and I've gone to as many seminars as I can, but the only thing I would add would be more seminars, more learning. And probably the one thing that I haven't done that I would love to do is go over and spend some time at Michael Ellis's school. I think that would be my one thing that I'd really like to do. But I can do that in the future, and it's not I should have done it in the past. So I think that I wouldn't be changing a thing, mate. I'm very worried about that butterfly effect.
Yeah, there's some good responses there, Brent, and I agree with the majority of what you said. I think that butterfly effect example is actually quite a good one. In addition to that, you mentioned Michael Ellis, getting the opportunity to go and train with him at some stage. And I really wish that I did have an opportunity to invest with some school time with Michael in the past. It doesn't mean that his teaching isn't good now or he hasn't refined what he's doing. I think counter to that, I think Michael is more wise and more proficient. He's slowed down and he's thought about things. And I believe that the journey of brilliant and great trainers that I've got to know is not that they just have a lot of information. It's they've got good information, terrific information. Like they've learned what really works. They've had good time to digest it and compartmentalize it where it's more effective and it means something. I do think that early on, I had Panos on for this episode as well. We were talking about a bunch of things in regards to learning opportunities, and I really do believe that opportunities like that in my past, I would have loved to have had some of those opportunities because there were possibly times for me where I felt like I'm doing this, but I'm doing it somewhat parrot fashion to what other people have shown me how to do as well. And I believe that possibly I would have liked to have had a little bit more variation. And it's not to say that I didn't have good footings and foundations. It's just that I possibly would have liked to have looked at a little bit more of an assortment of training titans in mentorship, people who were very proficient. I had some access to that, but I probably would have liked just a little bit more so I could see a little bit of variation and a bit of differences. But like you, mate, I don't have any regrets.
Yeah, I agree. I really feel, Cookie, that I sort of came up in the, like I can call it the lucky time, where there wasn't that old school type training. Like, was it around? Sure, of course it was around. Were there people not using food rewards? Yeah, sure. But it wasn't, I never really saw dogs getting absolutely crushed. I saw corrections and those sorts of things and punishment was used, but I never saw dogs getting absolutely flattened. So I think I really came in at that time where the access to good quality information was available. So you weren't restricted to just learning from this one person or only what was done in the club. So I think I was super lucky in regards to that type of learning. But I also sorted out. I spent money to come up to Sydney. We spent money to travel. We spent money bringing people out. We spent money buying all of the DVDs from Leerberg and doing online courses and all those sorts of things, and continue to still do that as well. I mean, 2 weeks ago, I was at Pat Stewart's seminar down in Melbourne. So the learning for me is ongoing, which is the best part, I think. Like there's no end. There's always stuff to learn. Keep your eyes open, keep your ears open, and continue to grow. But for me, I'm very much the same as you I would have loved to have gone to Michael Ellis 10 years ago. But in saying that, I agree. I think with the quality of people he has around him now with Cam Ford and those sorts of things too, like that type of a school going there now, you're getting perhaps more refined information. And Michael still seems like he's every bit as engaging now that he was 10 years ago.
Indeed.
He still seems to be caring about it and learning. And so I don't think you'd be losing anything if you went over there tomorrow. But I think if I had to nail something down, it would be I would have liked to have gone over and spent some time at the Michael Ellis School.
That's another good point that you made with the rise of Cameron in Michael's circle of influence, which I think has been terrific for each other. I really feel that they do complement each other well in that Cameron is bringing a lot of technology to Michael's school and also his detection side of things. I believe that they're great colleagues and they spin off each other very well. When you get to watch them working with each other, which I had the privilege of when I went over there and spent the week with both of them, seen plenty of work that Cameron's done. I've got to see more of what Michael's done, but we all grew up with Michael. We're all school children of Michael, so to speak, because we did his DVDs and he was sort of like a patron of the industry, so to speak. I don't want to talk so much about me and my experiences, Brent, but I was concurring with what you were saying there. What I would like to ask you in your career, the time that you've been done it, because it is quite some time now. I was thinking fondly about my experiences when I first met you and Kat on the course, and you were sitting next to each other, and I said to you, "Are you a couple?" And both of you looked up at me and said, "No."
At the time, we weren't.
Yeah, I know. But funny I asked you that question, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it's really funny because we distinctly remember that. We talk about it. We were friends getting closer to something more. We're obviously pretty keen and interested in each other. And our dogs, her Rottweiler Tank and my Labrador Sophie, they became best friends, which was awesome. And then Kat and I just spent a lot of time together. And our first date was actually going and watching dogs work. So first time we kind of went out together was doing some dog training stuff, which was cool. And I think our second and third dates were exactly the same as well.
Amazing.
So yeah, we remember that fondly, mate. We were at the school, we were in the hall. You were taking us for tracking and trailing.
Yes.
Sophie and you were eating an apple and you gave her some of your apple and you turned around, you looked at me and said, you could teach this dog to do anything with this food drive.
Yeah, I know. I recall that like it was yesterday. Fondly and sadly, it was such a long time ago. Brentos, with your career, I know you've already answered some of it and said that you probably wouldn't change anything, scared of the butterfly effect. But is there a highlight in your career, like one area, one time that you really look back on and you just think that's where it all came together? This is where everything started making sense and my North Star, my Polaris, was finally revealed to me. Is there a time in your life that happened?
I think I've had lots of little moments along those lines. Recently, I ran a workshop over in Adelaide for the Canine Connect crew. So Scotty, who you know.
I do.
And that workshop, I came back and everybody was sort of saying, yeah, how was it? I'm like, it was the best workshop I'd ever run. It just clicked. And I think the topic was good. The dogs that were there were good. Everyone laughed at my jokes. So that was awesome.
That's important.
That doesn't happen very often. That doesn't happen often. So I think that was a really, really cool moment for me. But there's another one that I think of a lot. It's one of our clients. So pet dog client, her name's Donna, and she's got a little spoodle called Ned. And Ned can be a really naughty little dog. He'll randomly get into his brain that he's found a stick at the park or a leaf at the park and he's going to resource guard it and literally super happy to bite if you try and take it off him. And I remember getting a phone call from Donna one day and she just sort of said, hey, look, Ned was doing this behavior and I was about to call you. And I said, you know what? I'm not. I'm just going to sit here for a minute and say, what would Brent do? And I thought about it and I thought about it. And she said, I think Brent would tell me to do this. And I said, Donna, that's exactly what I would have told you to do. And for me, that moment of getting across to clients, the learning, the teachings, the passion, the joy, and then working out how to problem solve. I mean, that's what dog trainers do, right? Like we problem solve.
Yeah.
So when I'd pass that on to a client and then she said that to me, that was a really, really cool moment for me. And that was, that was quite a few years ago, but that's one thing that I never forget, mate. So that was a really important one for me. I liked that. And then there's, obviously lots of other little ones, things I've done with Puppy, things I did with Sophie, things with Zuka, all of our dogs. But that one, those two kind of stand out for me right now.
Isn't it a blessing and an absolute privilege when you become the narrator in somebody else's head?
Yeah.
I don't think there's any greater compliment when somebody says to you, I was doing something and I heard your voice and I acted on it and it saved me from myself and it fixed something that I was doing either with myself or with my dog. The one compliment that I get so many times now is people, hundreds, like literally hundreds since I've done this podcast, is people saying, I was about to do something stupid and I can remember you saying no more one more time. That's something that we developed in the early days of ADT and that has flourished since that time, and it's become a statement that people actually make when they go to do one more increment or one more rep that they shouldn't do. So I get it, mate. I'm with you. I share that privilege.
Yeah. I have clients who come down and they say that in the middle of a group class. I'm like, do you want to do one more? And they're like, no more, one more. I'm like, that's awesome. Finish it and off you go,
cool.
So I know it's the 300th episode, right?
Yep.
But the reach that you guys have, and it's not because it's not just dog trainers, like so many of our pet dog trainers listen to the podcast. And I think that's the cool part, like you guys are sort of out there inspiring new people to investigate the field and that sort of thing. So, and it's easy for me to sit there and when you get clients, you get your pet dog clients coming through and they get interested, and we've sent loads of them off to do the NDTF course, and we've sent loads of them to the Canine Paradigm to have a listen and, go through episodes or whatever. Those sorts of times where they do sit there and they, repeat something back that you say, or they kind of do think about what they're doing, and then they look at it from a dog trainer's perspective, which is what we ideally are inspiring them to do and getting them to do. It's a really nice feeling, mate. It's a really nice feeling.
It is, mate. It's truly what I consider a privilege. When I think back on those type of things, and I've told all people before, all the NDTF schools that I've run over 15 years have been up here, or 14 years, I should say, if I'm being honest, up here, but also in Melbourne as well. What I tell people is, I don't want you to be like me. I want you to be like you, just a better version, and fast track all of the mistakes that I've made, that I've told you about on this course, all the silly things, all the things that don't work, all the things that offend people, all the things that disenfranchise the relationship between dogs and owners. These are the things I don't want you to do. What I want you to do is become the best version of yourself with new knowledge on how to become a dog trainer, and then go out and search the world. Use your new skills now to find out how to enhance it. And don't become anybody else either. Don't become their parrot or their coffee bringer. Like, be you. Like, find out how to integrate that in there. Because what I want people to do is, yes, I love the fact that they're doing things right. Yes, I love the fact that they're following good advice. But I also feel for our new trainers out there, and even for experienced trainers out there, the best way you can do this right is use your good advice, but also be original at the same time. It doesn't mean you have to be so far left or right of it. It just means that when you feel it, you will feel it. You'll experience it, because you're talking of this now, and Panos talked about it, and there's going to be other people that are going to be on this episode. They're going to be talking about their experiences and where they felt that it became right, or where a switch came on in their life. And I distinctly remember, like you, moments in my life which are highlights. Like, honestly, mate, I said the same thing to Panos, and I've said the same thing to you. Meeting you guys was a big highlight in my life as well. Like, you've become family to me. You're not just, like a friend that I occasionally speak of. There's often times that I think about you, and it's not just me, it's other people as well. I did a podcast with Tom Brown the other day, and him and I spent 5 minutes talking about you, because you matter to people's lives. Like, you make an effort to get to know people, probably a lot more than a lot of people I know, Brent. And I think that's one of your defining characters, if I can say it out loud. And it's something that I would never want to say at your eulogy without saying it to your face, is I think you'll make it to mine before I make it to yours. But the point is, it's important for me, for the people I love and the people who are important to me, that they know what they did and they know where they made changes to people's lives. And I think the one admirable quality of your many is that you genuinely show interest in other people. And it's not just to predatorily get something from them. It's because you're just a good man, and you've always been a good man, never a person that people have to question your motives. And I just want to take a little moment to thank you for that, mate, because that's not usual. There's a lot of people, unfortunately, that populate the industry. I don't know what happens to them, and I don't know what changes them, but sometimes they just get so fixated on feathering their own nest, so to speak. But sometimes it becomes in such a malicious and a territorial or a resource guarding way that it just makes it unpleasant to be around them. And I just really appreciate you for not being that person. And I feel that when people seek a mentor, that's what I love, that I know that they will get from you. They will get integrity, and they will get a very genuine person with a genuine message as well.
Thank you, mate. That means a hell of a lot to me. It really does. We are family. We've spoken about this a lot, right? Like, coming up and staying at your house when I come to Sydney, it just fits. It's always fitted. Living with you and Raleigh, and I could be there for 2 nights or I could be there for a week, and it just fits. And there's never problems. There's no dramas or anything along those lines. And I think part of it for me is just making sure that I can be as authentic as I can and show love when I can. And that's kind of what I want to do. There was a girl down here that got bitten by a dog. She's a trainer, and not long ago, there was something on, I think it was a Balance Symposium, or it might have been on your page, on the Canine Paradigm page. she wasn't even looking for, I don't even know what she was talking about. I don't know if, because she didn't put the post up, I don't think she was looking for help. But I just messaged her and just said, look, if you want to come out and be around dogs, I'm at dog training tonight, so feel free to come along. And then she messaged me. She's like, are you kind of joking? I went, no, like, I don't know where you're at. Like, a dog bite is not just a dog bite. It can take you out of the industry. And we don't want that. We need people like you in the industry. Like, you're obviously passionate. You obviously care about what you're doing. So if you want to get out and be around other dogs and some different people, then come down to Dog Club tonight. Come and hang out. Come and bring your dog, train your dog. I'm not going to charge you anything. Just come down, you know. And she came and it was awesome. And I think she appreciated that. But I think that I do those things because I feel that other people would do it for me. I think that's why I do it. I don't know, mate.
Well, I believe what goes around comes around. And I think that because you've done it so often for other people without expectation, people are happy to do it for you. Like, I think you find that when you're that type of person, you attract like-minded people into your camp, hopefully.
Mate, I don't think I've really said this publicly that I kind of remember. I may have or I may not have. But you know, you obviously know that I do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I'm a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu competitor. It's something I really enjoy and I've found a deep passion and deep love for. And a month and a half ago or so, I actually got awarded Teammate of the Year from my club.
Hardly surprised.
Yeah. And that was what everyone else said, you know?
Yeah.
They're like, of course you did it. But when you're in it, you don't see it, I don't think, mate. I think I'm just trying to be the Teammate of the Year for all my friends and all my family in the dog world. And if I can do that and help somebody, then to me, it's mission accomplished, mate. It's a nice feeling.
The reason I say I'm hardly surprised is when I look at a lot of the posts that you throw up online, it's a vast majority of them are acknowledging other people in your life and the accomplishments that they did. And a lot of times social media, and not everyone does this, like a lot of people do similar things. So I want to acknowledge that too. But most of the time when people do things on social media, it's about a portal into their life about them. You know, like I see things where you talk about your coach and what a cool dude he is and some of the super people that you train with, and like even people down at your center that have inspired you or done something cool with their dogs. I think that's nice that it's not just about me, it's about we. Listening to Arnold Schwarzenegger's new book, I think it's called Being Useful. I think that's the title of the book. I don't recall it exactly. However, I listened to the book. I was driving down likewise to do a seminar in Canberra, and I listened to it there, and half of it there and half of it on the way back. Just a really fascinating book. He did all these amazing things all in his life, but it really funnels into the point that the most important things to him was his relationships with Franco Colombo and, you know, like his children and the disappointment he had having the affair and all those sort of things. Like, he's proud of his achievements. They're great. They help define him and they help to cultivate some of his urges and his desires in life. But he also has very strong recollections of the people in his life, the community that was made around him. And I think that for us in the dog training community, the things that I really start thinking about more often, it's not just about the things I've done in dog training, it's absolutely the people I've done it with. And they're the memories that I think of most, you know, the big fun time laughs and the people I've met. And like, we've done some cool things, but having the amazing community around me, having those exceptional people around me during that time, that's where I feel that it's really come together for me.
Yeah, I agree, mate. My one thing with something like social media is the way I'm trying to use it for myself is to share things that I'm proud of that people are doing.
Yep.
And to promote my friends in jiu-jitsu, in my dog training world, and my friends and my family. And the funny thing is, you sent me the very, very first episode of the Canine Paradigm. You're like, hey, mate, I've just, we put this together. Pat and I have put this together. I'm just going to send it to you. Like, have a listen and kind of let me know what you think. So I listened to it. I'm like, man, I love it. And I shared it. And people just sort of saw it and started to comment and jump on. You're like, Brent, it wasn't meant to go out yet. I'm like, well, it's out there, man. I'm sorry. Yep. I didn't realize it was like a test one, but I just started to share it. And so I've been there since day one, mate.
Supporting your mates in the community, like always.
I have, yeah, and I think it's a nice thing. I think that's what social media for me is all about, and if I can do that, I think it makes the world a better place in some little area for me anyway.
It does, mate. And look, we're out of time. We were only supposed to go for 15 minutes, but I could listen to you talk all day, and I miss your face. Thank you, mate. I really appreciate your time, and I appreciate what you're doing for the industry as well, because I know, I don't want to make this sound corny, but you are creating like a genuine safe space for new and seasoned trainers to come and talk about things and not feel beaten down or used up or strung up or anything like that. I feel that when people come to you, they can actually feel like, yeah, I gained something and I've come away with a new friend. That's certainly something that you've provided, mate. Once again, big thank you.
I appreciate it, mate. And again, to both you and Pat, congratulations on your 300th episode, mate. It's a massive achievement.
Thanks, mate.
I hope you kind of have that time sometimes where you do sit down and you see that it is an achievement and that you have helped a lot of people in the dog industry and you've brought a lot of people together, mate. So congratulations.
I think for both of us, I absolutely couldn't have done this show without Pat. Pat has helped me find some drive in myself that I didn't know I had, and he keeps me humming along. He's a very industrious sort of person, and I recall something that Tom said to me, he goes, you and Pat are polar opposites of people. And I said, yeah, we are. We're different people. We don't live in each other's pocket, but when we come together, we can talk honestly with each other and have a conversation, and I think that's what makes it interesting, is that it's a combination of old and new. It's a collection of stories and real things that are happening, not just in dog training, but how people feel about shit. Yeah. I think that's why the show lasted as long as it did, is it's not just jargoning on about training a dog. The real story and the real human relationships that we have along the way, because without that, it is nothing. It is just going out there with a dog, and not that it's a bad thing, don't get me wrong, but there are so many feelings and so many doubts and so many things creeping through people's minds that I always felt, and so did Pat, that this is worth talking about, because if people won't talk about it, and I found that since we did it, a lot more people felt braver to speak about it on their podcasts or their shows or their YouTube clips or whatever they're doing. People started opening up a little bit about things, and if we inspired that, that's a great thing, because there were times where I was a younger guy involved in training and we didn't get those opportunities sometimes to speak freely or speak about the things that we were feeling without doubt or without feeling we'd be ridiculed or something like that. That might have been in our head, but that's because we just didn't have mentors talking about that themselves. They were just sort of sticking to the plan and do it this way, do it that way, put your feet here, put your feet there. Whereas I believe that there is a conversation around that as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, buddy. Thank you very much. We'll leave it there. If you want to learn more about Brent, how can people get hold of you, bud?
The business is called The Canine Company, THE letter K number 9 Company. You can follow me on Instagram, Brent Dry Dog Trainer. I try to throw in as much dog stuff as I can, but there'll definitely be a bit of jiu-jitsu in the background there as well. But that's probably the two places, really, Facebook and Instagram. Check it out.
Awesome, buddy. Thank you very much.
We couldn't do this without our mate, Chad Mackin.
Hey guys, Chad Mackin here, former host of Dog Training Conversations podcast and Something to Bark About podcast, and just a general all-around dog trainer. Question is, if I could travel back in time to any point in my career, where would I go and what would I want to accomplish? I have two answers to that. One very specific one and one generalized one. The specific answer is, there was a time shortly after I joined the International Associations of Canine Professionals, when I had been reading a lot of stuff on their group about professionalism and pricing yourself like a professional, and if people can't afford you, they shouldn't have a dog, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, never lower your price and all of this stuff. And I had a couple of women come in with a dog who had aggression issues, and they sounded pretty serious. And they asked me what training would cost them, and I gave them a quote. And they looked at each other, and I could tell from the look on their faces that there's no way they could afford it. And I just ignored my inclination to help them out and told myself, I'm a professional. I'm going to get paid what I'm worth, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Then I met Dick Russell. I shouldn't say I'd already known him, but I didn't know him that well yet. And, he told me, you can't give it away with a generous heart fast enough to go broke. And he told me all the people that he helped and all the times he helped. And I said, that's who I want to be. And I would love to go back and help those women. I didn't have the opportunity then. I got no contact information. I couldn't call them. I couldn't track them down. So somewhere out there, there's a dog that needed my help that I refused. And if I could go back and change that, that's one thing I would definitely change. The general one is I've reached a point in my career now where when somebody does something in a way that I think is not very efficient or problematic or whatever, I just go, hey, that's cool. I'm glad that's working for you. Have you thought about this or whatever? Like, I know there was a time in my career where I was pretty adamant about trying to change people's minds about things. Like, no, this is better. Let me show you why. I don't do that anymore. And I think I alienated a lot of people because of my pig-headedness. And if I could go back in time to when I was that person and convince myself to stop being that person, I think I would have been a better coach and teacher and reached a lot more people. And I would have been a better person, I think, too. So those are my two. Hope this is good. Bye.
Back with us again, the sleeping boy himself, Panos Anagnostou.
So it's our 300th show, and as promised, we're going to speak to some dog trainers, men and women around the world, and I'm joined by Panos Anagnostou from Nooches Pooches and Life with Your Dog, which I've been on, and you've been on the Canine Paradigm with Luke, and we've had bro hugs all over the place. How are you, bud?
Yes, sir. Very good. How you doing?
Yeah, good, thanks.
Very good to see you again.
Always great to see you, mate. You know, we've got the 300 show, as we've said, and we had a question we put in the Canine Paradigm discussion group. So I wanted to talk to people about their career, and this is more about you than it is about me. So I want to ask you the question. So the question is, if you could travel through time to any point in your training career, where in time would you go, and what would be your objective?
Yeah, it's a great one. I've been mulling that over the last couple of hours since we've discussed, and I'm in two worlds, and I'm going to answer one with one answer, and it's not a complete answer, and then I'll give you the real answer.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like it's a regret or I want to go back and change something, because if we're cool with the thing that we are now, with the journey that we've had to come to the realization of what we have now, it's hard to wish something different, because who knows what path I would have taken you on, which may not be at the place where I feel good and happy and, love for where I am now. So it could be hard to have that, because the things that we wish we had and the lessons that we wish we had without having them was the lesson, right? So I guess that's a bit of an esoteric sort of philosophical side to it. But thinking about it pragmatically, what could I have done different? I remember in 2014, I was at a NEPOPO seminar with Tobias Olniak, and it was fascinating. I learned heaps of things, but I realize now, if I look back, that I really, truly didn't understand conditioning, especially classical conditioning. I, of course, knew what it was and I was teaching it, but I didn't understand on a deep level the reflex that it occurs, the feeling that it promotes, rather than it being, I thought more at that time, and I was still a new trainer within 2-3 years of training, is that I really thought of it as like a thinking. A dog hears a thing, hears a stimulus, and then he responds to it more like, oh, I'm going to do this now, rather than it being reflexive, truly a feeling. And if I knew that then, and then being exposed to the NEPOPO system, because since I've learned more about it with Pat and everything that I've learned through that, with the experience that I gained over those 9 years at the time, or whatever it was when I was exposed to it, truly, it would have been nice if I went back and gone, this is actually what conditioning is. And from there, my training would have been more dynamic, feeling like what it is now. But again, that's what you get with lots of experience and not knowing. So I hope that answers some of that, and I'm happy to elaborate.
It does answer the question, mate. Thinking on your response to that, I reflect upon some of my own thoughts and feelings along the way. I guess it's very similar to some of the things that I would pull up myself. And I probably find that there were times where I was regurgitating material but never really understood the deep-seated meaning to them, like the importance or the origin of the meaning or the wisdom behind the meaning of what I was actually doing. It wasn't until I experienced it for myself. I think that has been a breakthrough moment for me, if I'm completely honest, is when I needed to know what it felt like or needed to be immersive in the experience of it. I think that was truly the time that things started to make sense to me. There's so many people that I feel that are in not just the dog training industry, but in a lot of industries where they're not coached to be free thinkers. They're coached to parrot fashion and narrative. So primarily what people are done is, don't mess this up. This is what we consider perfection, and just do it this way. I'm not saying that's wrong. In some instances, like when you've got big businesses like McDonald's, for argument's sake, they want to keep the customer service exactly the same. They don't want people to travel from store to store and have a different experience, and I respect that. But when you're training people and dogs, you've got to understand that they're different the way they comprehend. And it's the comprehension side of things where I believe that people, in order not just to be what you would consider a trainer, but then to migrate into a great trainer, is have comprehension of that, know it, physically and mentally invest in that process. And I really believe that's where change comes from.
If I think about that, my first answer would have been, see, I was 21 years old when I started the business. So I was just young in life in general, let alone like young in my career with dogs. So, I jumped right into it, and I obviously had, but I was competent and I was getting results for the everyday person. If I look back on it now, I'm like, yeah, that was a good place to start. It just is what it is, right? However, if I had been mentored a lot more, maybe for the first 5 years, I reckon in regards to skill of understanding the art of dog training, the science of dog training, it would have propelled me further into the space. However, when it comes to, for me and my relationship to dog training, is that it is my career as well. It's a business that I need to run. So there's two sides to it. It's that as you're gaining experience and learning, there has to be, who is it that you're going to be experiencing and working on? Of course, I had a lot of experience working in different shelters and rescue organizations and different boarding kennels, including pet resorts. In hindsight, if I stayed at pet resorts a lot longer and been closer to you and being mentored a lot more hands-on, we still stayed in contact. I was still keeping up to date with my learning and attending seminars and workshops and doing different courses. So I never stopped learning. But if I was truly actually mentored for a big chunk of time, I think that would have been also something that, if I had a time machine, I probably would have opted for that as an option, potentially, because I think I made so many errors along the way. And I guess that helped me gain knowledge and wisdom, because I guess wisdom is experience and knowledge put together. It's just, what was the payoff to that? And did it take longer than I had to? But in terms of that, I was able to be running business for the last 12 years. So I've learned those lessons as well. So if you're in a place where you're content, and of course I have heaps of aspirations and goals and things that I want to improve on. It's just that I'm on one level on a spiritual journey. I'm, hokahea means, today's a good day to die. And in saying that, I can die today with no regrets. So to have that mindset, I don't want to wish and change anything, and I'm happy with who I am. Compared to a business mindset, you have to be dopaminergic, hungry enough, constantly moving forward to stay in business and to be able to put food on the table. So it's reconciling those two mindsets and then trying to answer the question. One of them is, I change nothing because experience is what it is. And if I could change anything, being mentored and understanding specifically conditioning. I think people think they know conditioning, but you can't think you know it. You have to know that you know it. As you said, it's a knowing and it's a feeling. And once you can understand conditioning for yourself, applying it to another species, to an animal, to a dog in particular, and then having functional outcomes and results, along with being able to teach it enough so that the everyday person can do it without them knowing the fundamentals, but still getting the results. And that's the art there.
Wise words, my friend.
Thanks.
I was exposed to a quote the other day, which I liked, and I repeated to some other people, and it led to some healthy debate. The quote says, I'm just going to read it. If I had to live my life again, I'd make the same mistakes, only sooner.
Yeah, nice.
I liked it too. I've had some people that said, well, what's the point of making those same mistakes again? But in essence, I think what it kind of meant to me when I heard that quote and listening to a few of the things that you were talking about and even reflecting on some of my own experiences, if I could get through them sooner, I could get to the good parts. Let's say, for example, you're doomed to make the same mistakes throughout the ripples of time. And if you ever watched the movie The Time Machine, which effectively was the interesting curator of wanting to discuss this, in that movie with Guy Pearce, it's the remake of the original Time Machine. He goes back in time. The reason he is motivated to create a time machine is to rescue his fiancée who gets killed. So it's kind of like his motivation to do so. And in doing so, every time he rescues her, she just dies of something else. The path of time
It's
is not
fate.
going to let him cheat it. Let's say, for example, you have to make those mistakes throughout your life. Well, I'd rather make them sooner. I'd rather make them all combined together so I could sail through the other things.
Well, also so you can compound them. more.
Compound them, yeah,
Because
yeah, exactly.
a mistake is about compounding the experience, and that you don't, if you're aware of it, and that you want to make the change on it, then you leverage that mistake and the lesson for you to be better and to grow more. So on a personal level, the mistakes are necessary as long as you're aware of them. So maybe the awareness of the mistake so you can make them sooner so you can propel forward and further. But also, what's the mind and who's the person asking for the improvement? If you're the one who wants the improvement and the improving, then you don't know what it is that you need to improve to be better. It's the same mind that's asking to make the problem better. Like, you wouldn't know what to change if you don't know, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does make sense.
That's gone too far from dog training. But I guess if I can make it relevant, and it is that if you are training dogs and you're wishing to be better, you wish this to be, it's like, no. It is what it is. You're improving yourself to where you were yesterday, and you're in competition with yourself. You're not competing with the other dog trainers. You can be inspired by them. You can see and go, wow, I need to learn more things. I want to be more like that. But you're only in competition with yourself, and you can only make yourself better for you to actually be where you want to be.
Yeah, nicely said. Another reason which motivated me to want to ask this question is how paralyzed people are by making mistakes, how they feel, especially younger people who feel very criticized or feel very afraid to do anything or speak out or say anything. And I've had the pleasure of talking to a lot of people on forums, and when I was teaching trainers and doing a lot of those sort of skills, some of these people were completely paralyzed by fear. They wanted to do these courses, but they were operating in the shadows, terrified to expand. And fundamentally, you know, that comes through childhood experiences. There is a considerable amount of bullying online where people talk over you and suffocate you from the light, so to speak. Now, other people have said, well, that's your fault. You should toughen up and eat your concrete pills and harden up and do that. But if you feel the combination of lifestyle, the way you're raised, and then also how your habitual and social experiences are, then sometimes you feel like, well, what's the point of speaking it? What's the point in saying something? What's the point in being exposed as a fraud or allowing people to see me and my mistakes? It's very paralytic for some people. I understand that to a degree. There's times where I've thought, well, I want to show people this on media when I'm doing something with a dog, but then I see other people doing it. I think, well, what's the point? Somebody else has already done it. Why bother to reinvent the wheel or look like I'm trying to compete with my neighbor or like a colleague or somebody that I've seen on YouTube or whatever it is? Like, I've been criticized for that as well. I've been criticized for people saying, you're a mentor to a lot of people. Why aren't you showing the work? Why aren't you showing people how to do things? So there's good argument for each.
Well, I heard, and I don't remember who said it to me, and I've remembered it, but it hasn't bothered me, is that from the last time that we came on the podcast, it was like the comment was, and again, I don't know who said it, and I don't remember who said it to me, but it was that Panos had that question, how did he like weasel his way onto the podcast? Now, when I heard, and it was like a laughing comment, I'm like, oh, cool. And I'm just thinking about, first of all, I've never weaseled my way on anything, and I've always been invited to come on. So
onto the Canine Paradigm?
Yeah, onto the Canine Paradigm.
You earned your place here, man. Like everybody else who's been on the show, you've done great things for the community.
Thank you, brother. And I know that as well. So it didn't bother me. I just thought it was funny that most people wouldn't want to do anything so that they don't get criticized by somebody who probably wants to be on the podcast and hasn't been asked because they're probably not doing the work for it to be out there for anyone to know to ask you to be on anything anyway. So somebody's insecurities will come out and they'll project out so that it looks like people have the fear of other people's opinions, and then that fear will cripple them to your point of, I don't want to go out there, make any mistakes. Everyone's going to laugh at me. My advice to somebody who's in that position, who wants to get out there, start doing training and quit your career to work with dogs. And, you know, most family members and people may not see that and have that support for you. So fail your way to success. Get out there, try your best, and you're listening to something like the Canine Paradigm, so you're willing to learn. I just think it's important that everyone has mistakes, everyone has nerves, everyone has fears of doing everything new. And it's just your ability to move through that, which is what's going to make you more courageous and more brave. So don't try to wish, oh, it's too late for me. And no, I tried. If you really want something, I really think if you put your mind and body to it, you can condition yourself to make those changes. And I think That's what it comes down to. If it is a childhood trauma, then there is some conditioning that can take place for you to be able to change. And if you know how you can do that for a dog, because dog have, early life trauma that can manifest into other anxiety and behavior later in life, we know that modification can work. Can you apply the same? Can you learn what you've learned to apply to a dog? Can you implement it into your own life one way or another? And you may need help with that, but yeah.
I listened to you speak, Panos, and for a young guy, younger than me, you've really got an old head on young shoulders. I really feel fortunate to have you in my life. I don't want this to sound a bit buttery on the podcast.
No, thanks, bro.
It is a true blessing to have a friend like you in my life, and also to know that you're out there and as philosophical as you can be, you do care about the community, you do care about people, and you do care about raising the bar. And I feel that when I look at the small amount of investment that I put in you early on, and what you've taken with my teaching and anybody else's teaching that you've been investing and growing your life in, that's the legacy that I want to see. They're the little seeds that I want to see grow in the community. So, when I walk away and when I retire at some stage, you know that the world is still in good hands. You know there's still people that care and care across the board. They have a very holistic approach to it, and they are showing people how to get the best of their dogs, how to have the best relationships with all dogs, not just the dogs that comply, but all dogs in the neighborhoods. And also for people who want to come along and learn how to do that they've actually got a mentor and a guide and somebody to work with. So, mate, it's fantastic. It really is. It's a privilege to watch your growth and how you tackle things. And even, like I said, even listening to some of the conversations you're happening on your own podcast, it's really refreshing.
Thanks, bro. Really appreciate it. And it's always good to hear that from you're the voice in my head, especially early on when I'm doing things. I'm like, fuck, what would Glenn say about that? To know that, you got my back and I've got yours, and in real time. And, I'm inspired by you and what you do. And, and we're working together. There's cooperation, not competition. I think if we can cooperate more in a healthy way and raise the bar, let's raise the bar so we can be better. Because, we know that we're at war with industry and with government and with all of that. We all know that. And you can pretend that it doesn't exist, but it does. And it's going to affect us in the dog training world and in all different parts of our world. So be the best you can be and, shine some light on others around you so we can step up, be actual leaders, for our dogs and for yourself.
Yeah.
You're not going to be a leader for your dog if you can't be a leader for yourself and your family.
Yeah, nice. Well, now that we've had that beautiful little two-man circle jerk, I don't know if you can consider it a circle jerk with just two people, but we'll make it work.
We can make it circular.
We can make it circular. But now that we've done that and I've ruined a sensitive moment for everybody, I'd just like to thank you for your time, as always, mate. And if anyone wants to hear more of Panos, Life with Your Dog podcast with Panos and Luke, you can hear Panos riffing about some of the things that are important in life and his journey through dog training. Panos, thank you again, mate. You're a treasure, and more people should aspire to listening to the way that you approach the world and how inclusive you are with all people. Thanks again, bud.
Thank you, brother. I really appreciate it. Much love.
Always a pleasure to be joined by the godfather of PSA, Jerry Bradshaw.
Hi, Pat and Glenn. Congratulations on 300 episodes. It doesn't seem like the podcast has been on long enough for that to have happened, but surely it has. Big congratulations for keeping the content flowing and relevant and interesting and funny for all those episodes. You asked me to answer a question, which was if I could go back to any time in my dog training career, where would I go and for what reason? And I think that my answer would be I would go back to the start of my career when I was still mostly a hobbyist and in graduate school at UNC Chapel Hill. And I was training in my Schultzen Club. And I had a lot of fairly quick success because I was in a good place. I was surrounded by some great trainers. And I think as a younger man, I had a little bit of arrogance about the success that I had fairly quickly in the sport. And I would go back and maybe slap myself and remind myself that there was so much more to learn, so much more to achieve, and that there was so much ahead of me that I could do with a lot more humility, I could do with a lot more kindness, And I think that would be where I would go. Other than that, I like where I am right now. I really wouldn't go back and change a thing. I feel like being a dog trainer is about being part of an evolution. And certainly mine has been dramatic from the first days that I ever picked up a leash as a pet dog owner until today, and the things that I'm able to and capable of doing today. And I feel happy, I feel blessed, and I wish everybody in their dog training journey could experience the joy of doing something you love for many years. So in that vein, I say congratulations again. Thanks for being a part of our industry and being a part of PSA. And I hope your listeners enjoy all of the responses. I'm sure they're going to get some great ones from the folks that you reached out to. Good luck on 300 more.
Welcome, for his first time to the Canine Paradigm, Josh Kirby.
Hi, Pat and Glenn. I hope everything is good down under. My name is Josh Kirby. I'm a retired police canine handler and a PSA decoy. And the question, if you could travel through time to any point in your training career, where in time would you go and what would be your objective? I think that if I could go to any place in my career, it'd be back to when I was a young police canine handler. And I would have wanted myself to discover the sport world, or PSA in particular, a little bit sooner. Once I did that, I became a much better trainer, a much better decoy. And I wish I could have implemented those things a little bit earlier in my police career, because I would have been a better canine handler. I would have been training the dogs in my unit a little bit better. So the civilian world and the sport world has been very near and dear to me. It's a bridge that I hope continues to come together a little bit more in the canine world.
Welcoming back to the Canine Paradigm, Kirsty Reed.
Hello, TCP. My name is Kirsty. I own Leading Canine, which is a pet dog training business in Queensland, Australia. I work one-on-one with all sorts of pet dog clients for all sorts of reasons. My specialty is herding breeds, and I also instruct in sheep herding. Last but very much not least, I also co-own the Good Dog Project with my good friend and excellent human being, Maggie Scarville, through which we run group classes for pet dogs as well as specialised workshops. I have been a dog trainer for 9 years. The question's an interesting one for sure. I think my immediate inclination is to look backwards in time, find something I think I could have done differently, sliding doors moment, path not walked, find a decision that I think I should have made differently. But honestly, I don't think that's the goal. Everything that's happened up to now has led to this exact point in time. Every success, failure, choice, opportunity, interaction, connection, like all of it has been formative in getting to this exact point today. And I like where I am today. I love my job. I get paid to do my favorite thing every day, which will never stop being crazy to me. I like being part of the industry, and I'm really lucky to have great people in this space that I can call my friends. By the same token, though, I wouldn't really want to travel forward in time and ruin the surprise for myself of what the future has in store. I think, though, if I was given this opportunity to time travel, I would go backwards. Not to do anything differently per se, make a different decision, choice, etc., but with the objective of telling my past self to be a little bit kinder to herself and to refocus her perspective in a healthier way. So early in my career, I was very focused for a long time on reaching the point of being, air quotes, a good enough dog trainer. And definitely the pursuit of betterment is a motivator, a powerful one. And I think it's something most, if not all of us, are striving for. But I had it so twisted in my head. I had it as this destination rather than a perpetual journey. To the point it stopped me from being able to see and therefore celebrate any of my improvements along the way. I think we're really lucky as an industry. We're so connected. We have so much opportunity to learn from each other and have a lot of access to be really involved in each other's work. But comparison really is the thief of joy. It really took me till about 12 months ago to have the realization that this is a journey, it's not a destination, and to let myself lean into and really enjoy that. This year, for the first time, I was able to tell myself and believe it that I am a good dog trainer, when in reality that was probably true prior to 2024. When I was deep in adolescence with my youngest working collie, Rue, she's now 3 years old, This counterproductive mindset and like pursuing this unattainable destination, that was at its worst. Rue, for sure, she challenged me a lot, more than any dog I think I've ever encountered. But ultimately, she also had a lot to do with this change in mindset. And she made me not only a better dog trainer, but also a more resilient human. I love this little dog so much, and all the challenge only made our relationship that much stronger. So I'd go back to when she arrived in my life in 2021, when I was deep in the weeds of trying to reach this destination I'd set for myself. And I'd tell myself to wise up a bit. Be kinder to yourself and acknowledge all the progress that you are in reality making every single day. Congratulations on reaching 300 episodes, Pat and Glenn. What an incredible milestone. Thank you for everything that you both do for the industry, and thank you for the opportunity to be included on this episode. I've listened to you guys since episode 1, so for me, this is a real privilege.
Welcome, for his first time to the show, John Imler.
Hi, my name is John Imler. I'm a professional dog trainer in Louisville, Kentucky, and I own Top Dog Training. So the question is, if I could travel back in time to any point in my training career, where would I go and what would the objective be? I would travel back in time to when it was just a hobby. And my objective would be to convince myself to go ahead and become a professional dog trainer then and avoid a couple decades of trying to do other careers, because this is the career that I'm most passionate about. This is what I want to constantly learn about. This is what intrigues me. And, this is what I wish I would have done 30 years ago. Well done, boys. Amazing, amazing achievement at 300 episodes. Congratulations. You guys have built an amazing community. You should be super proud for the product you guys have put out and the influence that you have. Again, amazing job. I appreciate you both.
Our sister, from another Mr. Jazz Whiting.
Hey, what's up? I'm Jazz Whiting, and before I say anything else, I'd like to acknowledge Pat and Glenn for reaching episode 300 on the Canine Paradigm. Huge congratulations. This is a huge milestone, and it's not just for the quantity of the episodes, it's the quality. The content you guys share throughout these 300 episodes, it's been informative, it's been thoughtful, it's been honest. The production and the editing is incredible. There is just so much to thank here. And all of which is greatly appreciated by, I have no idea how many people listen to this podcast, but countless people around the world. We really appreciate you. So guys, thank you so much for everything you do in the community and for the community and everything that you've done for me. You've both had an enormous impact on me personally, as well as my career. And I've always felt that you guys are there to help guide me and to support me, part of which is encouraging me to always consider things from as many perspectives as possible, which kind of leads me into the question for today, which is about time travel to a particular time in our training career and what our objective would be. So, as boring as it might be, my answer is that I wouldn't really want to time travel. In general, I'd love to time travel. I would consider myself quite a curious person, so that would be amazing to be able to just learn about anything and everything. That would be quite an exciting thing for me. But in terms of an objective, I feel like you can't change anything. Even if you try to go to another time and to make changes, you're not going to be able to. The course is set. What's going to happen was going to happen anyway. You haven't changed the trajectory in the end. So I also am quite happy in my progress to get to where I am, and I'm excited to see the progress that's still yet to come, because there is still so much growth and knowledge to gain and experiences to have. So that would kind of be like the real short, sharp, quick answer. But for the purpose of this, if I was to choose a particular time, I would go to the future. I would go to the moment before I die, as morbid as this is. I would go to the moment before I die. I would collect all the knowledge and awareness that I have at that moment. I would return to the present, what we call the present, and I would then do the best that I can with that knowledge and awareness that I gained. But as I said, I don't think it would change anything. I would still end up in the same place that I went to in the future to get that information. And the main reason I would go forward as opposed to back in time is so that I have the opportunity to get the most advanced knowledge from myself that I could. Like every day, our awareness and our knowledge is adapting and continually growing. So I'd say it's a pretty fair assumption that I'd know more in the future. Seeing as we're making up a scenario here, I'm going to make it the best possible scenario, because if I don't have more knowledge in the future than what I do now and more awareness, then yeah, well, you know what? On that note, I think it might be time to wrap up before I end up in a deeper existential crisis. So again, Pat, Glenn, thank you so much for everything that you do. I wouldn't be where I am without you, and I appreciate you both very much. Until next time, catch you later.
Joining us on his first time on the Canine Paradigm, William Garrido.
Joining us all the way between Austin and Dallas, we're joined by William Garrido, who has his own channel and has been very social media active on Dog Training Is My Passion. Many of you have probably seen his material, laughed along at his memes, and also acknowledged him as being a real person who speaks his mind and speaks openly and honestly about the way he feels about things. So I couldn't go by this episode and not include William in this, because I really respect what he's got to say when he says something. I love hearing the information of honest people who don't hold back when they've got something to say or they see something that's happening in the industry and they're happy to speak about it. William, thanks for joining us, mate.
Thank you, Glenn. It's such an honor to be a part of this episode. So it's very kind of you. And again, it's an honor. Super thrilled.
Likewise, mate. It's an honor having you as part of our 300th show. And at some stage, we'll make the time to come back and revisit you and have you on a complete episode where we get to talk to you a little bit more about some of those things that I mentioned in the introduction.
I appreciate that. Thank you. I look forward to that. That'd be great.
Mate, I've sent the question out. Pat sent the question out. You've got the question in front of you. So I'd really love to hear your perspective of your time in the dog training industry and thoughts on, if you had that time, like if you could travel through time and you could pick a spot, where and why.
Like I said earlier, a moment ago, and like I told you in the message, it's such a good question, very thought-provoking. And I took time to think about it and go, that's a really good question. If I could go back in time, pick any time in the last 15 years that I've been doing this, where would I go? What benefit would there be to go into a certain point of my career? And then I just settled on this particular answer, which is I go back to the beginning and I would just watch, like probably the first 2 years of me doing this, just because, a lot of people, myself included, going into dog training as an adult is quite a transition. I went from a career, a secure paycheck. I had health benefits. I was in the Coast Guard, so I had a government job. I had 2 little babies, wife, 3 people that depended on me. And I made that transition, and it was difficult, to do that as an adult. So yeah, I could go back and, maybe make my life a little bit easier and go, hey, if we just were to switch this one thing, it could help you. It could cut maybe 3 hours of troubleshooting. 3 years of troubleshooting, right? It would cut 3 years of time to get you where you finally want to get to, instead of stressing for these 2 years. But just like you probably feel this way, the beauty is in the struggle, right? Just like, Barbalon talks about, the learning happens in the struggle. So I would just go back. I would appreciate the struggle. I would just watch. And now looking back on it, as scary of a period of time it was to go from a secure job to, basically doing something brand new. Looking back on that, those were the good times. The uncertainty, I got to really see my wife's faith in me and my ability to do things. Even at times I had no evidence of my ability to do this. It was a good life experience that, looking back, even if I could go back to that time and help myself by doing things slightly different, I don't think I would. I think I would just observe and appreciate the person I became by making that hard transition in the first couple of years of becoming a dog trainer. So that's the answer that I settled on.
It's a very wise and profound answer to the question, mate, because in my own comments when we open the show, I kind of talk about something similar. Would it be nice if I could travel back and even walk along myself and sometimes just put my hand on my head, my now hand on my past head, and just turn my eyes and stop me from looking at the things that I was looking at back then? Like most young people, you're attracted to things that are shiny and you want to run over there and get involved in those sort of things. I kind of wish I didn't. I kind of wished I trusted my intuition a little bit more and wasn't so easily led. But as you said, and I totally agree, I think it's a perfect answer to it, the struggle defines you. I often think to myself, and I've stated this before differently in different conversations, now that I am who I am, without having that happen or without those experiences that have traveled with me in the past, if I took them all away, what would be left of me? Because I kind of feel that it would be chopping a huge part of my body away. I know we're talking more the thinking side of it, but if you could picture it, it would kind of be like taking an arm and leg off you and then saying, now get through the rest of your life, because that's what you're sort of wishing away. I think the only way that you experience it, oddly enough, is by experiencing it.
Yes, totally agree. And that's what makes you appreciate life in general. If we were to think, I would do things entirely different so I wouldn't struggle as much, that to an extent points to some regret.
Yep.
And yes, we all wish things could be a little bit different. We all have that little fantasy of, man, if I just knew then what I know now, things would be a lot easier. I think we all do as part of the human condition to look back and go, man, life could have been easier if I had just known this. But at the end of your life, when you look back, when you're like 90, 100, or however long we're going to live, when we look back on our lives, that's what we have. It's the movie we made. Like you watch a movie, you watch Batman. Yes, if he could go back and we're talking about a movie here, but Batman would be Batman without those tragic events that took place in his life. And the movie wouldn't be as fun of a movie if his parents hadn't gone out that alley and then he would have been fine. So in our lives, I think that's what happens is we look back, we have a tendency to want to fix things. But at the end of the day, not fixing those things, as broken as they were at the moment, I think that's what makes you uniquely you. And that's what's part of everybody's charm, for better or for worse.
Yeah, good points. Fundamentally, my motivation behind wanting to ask this question and speak to people around the world more or less came from trying to help new people who get in the industry find their legs a little easier rather than the turmoil that some of us have had to have gone through. And thinking back on your answers now that you've just given, I really appreciate those because I think sometimes we had to go through those turmoils. Sometimes we had to struggle a lot. Sometimes we had to do a lot of extra legwork and travel so we could piece together that information. Once again, as I've mentioned on our show several times, I didn't have the internet to rely on. I didn't have online training. I had to get in my car and I had to go down and find people and meet them, and you had to make things happen. It wasn't just sort of gifted to you. And I feel that there's a lot of very fortunate and very lucky people who are being gifted with such brilliant information, because when I watch the advice from you and other people that you're speaking very honestly and openly to them, and you're also giving people information and showing people techniques. And yes, people are still building funnels into their business, which they should. This is still marketing and people have still got to put milk and bread on the table. However, there is also a lot of predatory people out there doing the same sort of thing who have no place in teaching some of the skills they're teaching, such as sporting dog work, dog aggression, and some of the high level and high profile things or skills that are involved in the dog training space. that worries me as well, because new people don't know where to navigate to. And I've seen and witnessed people that have been hero worshipping or even been mentored by people who couldn't fill the back of a postage stamp with the information they know about training. That scares me and that worries me. But as somebody pointed out to me once before, they said, it's not really your business to tell other people what to do. And I agree. It's not my business. All I can do is offer the suggestion, and then it's completely up to the individual which place they take. The reason I say that, it comes from a good place, not a place of jealousy or a place of maliciousness, because that's when I used that reference before. Like, if I could go back in time, put my own hand on my head, turn my eyes in the direction away from people who were misleading me, who didn't have my best interests at heart, who were setting me up for falls. If I could look away from those people and I could look in the direction of people who really were giving me value, really were affording me precious, precious time and the availability to learn life skills and dog training skills that would benefit me for the rest of my life going forward, I just know that I could have used that time more wisely. That's really the good place that I'm trying to guide newer people in, or people who have got less experience, because I keep getting the questions, where should I start? Who should I speak to? Because it's a big market. There's a lot of dogs out there for everybody. There's a lot of work out there for everybody. We don't have to be jealous. We don't have to try and...
Absolutely not.
Yeah, we don't have to try and fuck people over and ruin their business or spend our time worrying about what they're doing. We just need to be the best version of ourselves that we possibly can do. And even if we do have the privilege of mentoring younger people, which I have been so fortunate and blessed to do in Australia, and other parts of the world too. I've traveled to the UAE, I've been over to the United States, I've done online courses and mentored people, as you have done, and many of my other colleagues have done. And it is an absolute privilege to be afforded that time to somebody else that they think what you've got to say is special and worthwhile. And I feel really blessed that I've had the time to do that. And also that I've had time to listen to people that I likewise love the information that they've got and they're giving away for free or gratis online, even putting in their courses, which are just wonderful. An incredible medley of information that people will get so much of a head start. And even people who are along the way in their journeys will incredibly benefit from.
Oh, absolutely. I would even say that the experiences that you had that you mentioned earlier, of you maybe running into the wrong type of people, and if you could go back and go, just don't look at those people, they're going to waste some of your time. As unfortunate as that was, as a hassle and a hurdle, as much of a hurdle as that put in your journey, I would even argue that the reason you had to have that happen to you was so that you could now help people not go through that. You know what I mean? Like, it gave you the ability. It's like, if you work with a dog, and I don't want to drag this any longer than it needs to be, but like, if you were to work with a dog and you got bit by that dog, and you then look back and go, man, if I had just done this different, I would not have gotten bit. But the very fact that you got bit allowed you to learn a lesson that you wouldn't have otherwise learned, and allowed you to, tell other people, hey, make sure you do this, this, and this, and don't do or that or the other, because you will then experience what I experienced. It's almost like a sacrifice that sometimes we have to run into some of these shitty people, and we have to have these bad experiences, because one, it allows you to become the person that you ultimately become, but it also allows you to be in a position where you can look back at people and go, hey, I know that you're looking at all these shiny different objects, but from experience, I can tell you this, that, and the other. And I think that's what makes you great. That's what makes you such a great voice. That's what makes you such a great advocate of this industry, is because you've been there yourself. You had the struggle of not having the internet, not having social media, not having the availability of trainers and resources that we have today. But the very fact that you didn't have all those things, the fact that you got burned by some of these people that maybe took advantage of you or led you down the wrong path for a period of time, the very fact that that happened to you makes you Batman, so to speak, right? It makes you this person with a big platform. You and Pat can now influence a lot of people, because your guys' podcast is not like a tiny little podcast. It's a big name. it's got a brand of its own. Everybody who knows dog training knows Glenn and Pat, right? Everybody knows the Canine Paradigm. And so all of those experiences that you and Pat have had, as bad as some of them were, allowed you to have this altitude that you have now to put you in a position where you can now touch so many people's lives. So even then, we could argue that was meant to happen. And I would even say maybe a future you, 20, 30 years from now, if you happen to have that experience or that ability to go back in time, I can almost guarantee you if 30 years from now, Glenn had the ability to go back, you will go back to this time and go, I know you want to change a few things about back then, but trust me, it is in your best interest not to do that.
Kyle Reese had to travel back in time to meet Sarah Connor and create John Connor.
Exactly. It's such a profound question, like it's such a deep, thought-provoking idea. It really makes you question a lot of things.
I'm pleased that you've got to jostle it around with as much as Pat and I did when we originally put the question together, because what I don't want to do is make this sound like a grizzle that my life was just full of turmoil and there were so many terrible experiences. There wasn't. Like, I have been incredibly blessed with meeting some of the most profound and intelligent and generous people in this community. And that's why I love the community, and that's why I've dedicated 34 years now of my life advocating for it, protecting it, trying to ensure that it creates a future for other people. It's not about me. And this is what I'm trying to advocate for many of the people now that are veterans of the industry or coming into the industry. It's not about me. It's about we. And I'm trying to get people to understand that the only way that we survive this and the only way that we make this prosper, especially for the people involved in the balance scape who are wanting to do sporting dogs or still work with dogs that are got a bit of spice and a bit of character about them, the only way that we traverse this ground and make it better and that we see a future for ourselves, because we're talking about past, but now let's jump to the future. The only way that we make this happen, we have to stop making this about me. It can't be a me thing. When I watch people who are hell-bent on making this into a money-making machine or trying to build their own little guild or cult around themselves and so forth like that, they advocate that but it's really about kingpinning the me, and it's not a good thing. When I've seen truly great people, they aren't advocating themselves as great people. They're doing great work. They're just doing the work. They're building an empire based on being a good person, a solid person with information. They're kind, they're generous, they love what they do, and they love the people around them. Even though I grizzle a lot and I rant on the podcast here and there, I do want people to know that I do care about them. I want them to have this future, and I love knowing that I've got a team of people that I can network with, and if I get lost or if I lose my way or I don't have the information, I can reach out quickly to people. And thank you for your kind words that you said about the podcast before, William. It's been an incredible journey filled with incredible people along the way, and I feel so blessed to have shared this space and the precious time of these people, to know that we're brothers and sisters in arms, like we're all people in one big family that is dysfunctional at times but really does care about each other and really does want the concept of the we fraternity, that we are better together and we will make this a better place. And, like our dogs will benefit extremely for it. So I'm very thankful and appreciative of them and you and everybody else who is putting together an incredible amount of time. I know how much time social media takes. So when I see you and other people putting your time together to give people information, to educate people without some malicious reason behind it, I just think that is just fucking incredible. It's just amazing.
On behalf of the industry, thank you guys. You guys are really doing a great job. And I don't think anybody could listen to at least one episode and not realize that you guys truly care. I've never heard an episode of you guys' podcast that didn't sound like you truly had this priority to make the industry better. I've heard other podcasts, and I'm sure you have too, where you don't hear that as much. But with you guys, it truly revolves around how do we make the industry better? How do we make this better for the dogs? How do we make this better for the owners? How do we make this better for the trainers? You guys are obviously doing a good job, and your intent shows through. You guys are very genuine with the way you come across. So no, it's great. Keep up the good work, obviously. And I know you guys are going to.
Thank you, mate. And with that, we'll leave it there. And as I said before, I love to be joined. I think it's time that you, me, and Pat sat down and talked about some of the things in your life. And dog training is my passion because it's certainly a catchy brand. And I've laughed hysterically at some of your memes before that are really well focused into the industry. And folks, if you haven't looked at some of William's memes, check his social media profile and Instagram. Dog training is my passion. Have a look back through his history. He also does a bunch of information on there as well. What else, William? How else can people reach you if they want to find out a little bit more about you and your dog training services?
So if they go to dogtrainingismypassion.com and you want to work with me, there's a way for you to get in touch with me there. The books that I've written, if you go to Dog Training is My Passion, there's a link to every book I've written. So just go to dogtrainingismypassion.com and you can find a few different ways to get in contact and see some of the work that I've done.
Author, trainer, handsome bloke, all-round good guy, William Garrido. Thank you very much, buddy.
Thank you, guys.
Friend of the show, the one and only Jay Jack.
Hello to all the Canine Paradigm listening audience. This is Jay Jack, longtime friend of the show and of Pat and Glenn both personally. Beyond proud of you guys for the show that you put out and happy to be part of it. On to the question that was asked. If you could time travel, what part of your career would you go back to and what would be the objective? And I am notoriously horrible for questions like this. Because most of the time when people say time travel and go back, they're talking about what would you change? And I would never change anything. Like good, bad, nothing. I would change nothing because I have no idea what else changes when you change those things. And I love who I am and what I am and would never want to risk changing any of that. So even the bad shit made me what I am. And so I would never change anything. Like even the terrible stuff, not to sound trite, but even the terrible shit you learn lessons from, you grow from. And I would never want to lose the lesson, so I would never take away anything. So good, bad, and different, I would never change anything. So I would never do the time travel to change things. There's a Stoic principle called amor fati. It means to love your fate, right? Not just like deal with it, not just handle it, but to like truly love the life I've been dealt, right? Like the fate that I have come across, and it's made me what I am. It's like if you go, man, I love my partner, and then somebody goes, yeah, but who would you be with if you could be with somebody else? And then you talk about this whole daydream. How much in love with them are you? You know what I mean? So like, I find it difficult to truly be in the concept of love your fate and then do the daydream about all the things that you would secretly change, because I would change none of it. I love all of it. It made me what I am, and I love what I am. So that's the non-answer philosophical nonsense. Since I'm not talking about changing anything, you didn't say change anything. You said where would you go and what would the purpose be? So if I'm not going to change anything, then it would be revisiting things. And that I would definitely do. There are a few moments that are like, they were pivotal. And I would love to, with the eyes I have now, go back and experience those moments and see, are there lessons in those moments that I was not ready for? Because it's like if you watch a movie, a really complex movie, and then you watch it again a month later, you see things in the movie that you didn't see the first time. And like a really deeply layered movie, you can watch it 5-6 times and you'll still like, oh man, like you'll still notice new layers, right? So like I would go back to those really pivotal moments and see, you know, what I did, what I was able to discern in those moments was life altering. But how many layers was I unable to see because of where I was with my eyes at the time? So like, I would say those moments would be the first seminar I did with Chad Mackin, where I attended his seminar and I just met him. that seminar was pivotal for me. That changed so many things about the way that I understood and worked with dogs. But I would love to go back with the eyes I have now and see what else I would see in that moment. The second time I trained with Ivan, it was like a 5-day course. It was not a certification thing. It was the precursor to the TWC course, but it was like 5 days, all theory, super deep dive. And that was mind shattering for me also. And again, it changed a bunch and I learned a bunch, but I'd really be interested to see what the me of now would get from that same seminar. Like how much deeper would I be able to see those lessons? And then visiting some moments in time, like going back to the very early stages of working jacks. Oh man, I'm going to cry. Going back to the early stages of working jacks when I wasn't sure how to reach them and desperately needed to. And those moments of like figuring it out, those were like ecstatic moments of just like complete joy from being able to reach a dog that I didn't think I was going to reach. So like those are the moments I would go back in time to visit and see, and the why I would do it. So hopefully that's not too disappointing in the sense that I don't generally play the game of what would you change. That's it. So thanks for asking me, and I hope everybody has fun listening to this episode, and I look forward to 300 more shows with you guys, man. See you guys later.
Well, that's it.
Hope you enjoyed it.
That's it for episode 300 of the Canine Paradigm.
Thanks for sticking with us on our journey, like sincerely.
Yeah, for sure. So as always, if you like what you hear, please like, rate, share, subscribe. Do that through whatever subscription service you download us from, and then just go to another one, do it there.
Yep.
As we've talked about a million times, the very best way to support the show is to catch the bus, listening to the show, pull your AirPod out of your ear and just stuff it into somebody else's ear. That for sure is going to bring us a bunch of listeners, and you should definitely do that.
And avoid a lawsuit at the same time.
If you're unprepared to do that, you could just give us a few bucks in Patreon.
That's
your alternate.
Yeah,
buy us coffee. That's it. Yep. So a few bucks a month in Patreon gets you a backlog to heaps of information in there, as well as new stuff going forward. There's different tiers you can get in there. You can watch me answer questions or ask me questions once a month.
You did it today.
Next week. The post went out today. People will ask questions for a week.
Yeah.
And then I do it next week.
Yeah, nice.
Another way you could support the show, Teespring.
Yeah,
Spring.
Get
merch.
a tapestry.
Merch, yeah. Get a giant tapestry on your wall.
People were all about the tapestries for a while, and now they've just dropped off. So what the fuck's going on, people?
I suppose everybody that was willing to get one
has got one.
All the people who were like, yeah, all right, I'll fucking hang that in my training
I
shed.
haven't even looked in Spring for like months to see if there's any, like there's a couple of bucks rattling around the tin.
Well, get onto it. Get yourself some cool gear. If you want to get in touch with us, best way to do that is jump into the Facebook discussion group.
Yes.
That remains something that, again, that I'm pretty proud of. That there's a large conglomerate of people that it's probably one of the most civil dog groups. You know, there's the least amount of fighting. People get along in there.
And thanks to admins too. Like
team of admins that really watch that and are invested in keeping it the way that it is, even though none of us and the admin team are very especially big contributors. It's a bunch of people that care for the culture and maintain it as well as possible. So jump into there. That's a great place to group source information. But if you have specific information or questions that you want of us, you can shoot us an email. We are info@thecanineparadigm.com.
Happy
Love
300.
you all. Happy 300.
Yep.
Goodbye.